Classes in session, hitting the books, college football. Ian Cameron, Connor Mack with you Monday, September the 9th, week 3 in the college football season coming up. Connor Mack, I think the big overall impression from this past weekend is return of the Mac. It is return of the Mac. The Mac Conference. What a Saturday for some of these MAC conference teams stepping up in class against Power 4 competition. Bowling Green putting Penn State through the ringer on Saturday, nearly winning straight up as 34.5-point underdogs, almost 5 touchdown underdogs, and Happy Valley gave Penn State everything they could want in that game. Tremendous performance by the Bowling Green Falcons, even falling short 34-27. And of course, the headliner, really the headline result of the entire weekend, Northern Illinois. What an incredible upset win for them over Notre Dame. 28.5-point underdogs. We made the case for Northern Illinois last week on this show. We talked about that game. We said there's no friggin' way we're laying 4 touchdowns with Notre Dame in this spot. But winning the damn game outright, NIU, the Huskies, not sure I saw that coming. I'd say just hang around. Just stay inside the big number. I was pretty confident in that. I think you were too as well, C-Mac. But the outright win, no way. Didn't really see that coming, but what a job by Northern Illinois. And if you watch that game, Connor, there's no fluke. I don't want to hear this bullshit that, Northern Illinois got lucky. They got some turnovers. They got a couple of calls to go their way. No, shut it. It's got nothing to do with that. They were the better football team on that field on Saturday afternoon, and they outplayed Notre Dame. They earned it. One of the biggest upsets we'll probably see C-Mac all season in college football.
Yeah, it's classic Notre Dame. I know some other people that liked it too, but same thing. Notre Dame after the big win, and it showed is there's just problems with his offense. Riley Leonard doesn't look the same.
He was not good.
We'll get to another. NC State with McCall. I'll get to him later in the show. These guys, just don't look very good right now. I don't know if it's past them. They're still a little bit banged up. Of those guys, but and hats off though to in the end there, to go down there, get that field goal to win it. I mean, just hats off to them.
Incredible job. And look, the defense played their guts out for Northern Illinois. What's funny, that game, Notre Dame goes right down the field, the very first drive of the game, and goes up 7-0. I'm like, that was too easy. Is Northern Illinois in trouble? And that was pretty much all they did. That was pretty much all they did the rest of the game on offense, Notre Dame. From that point on, Northern Illinois, it was big for Northern Illinois, too, that when they got down 7-0, Notre Dame went, boom, right down the field. Northern Illinois responded right away and tied it up 7-7. And I think that got their confidence right back up again. And pretty much they controlled the game. I mean, that was a 28.5-point underdog controlling the game, in my opinion. In that win over Notre Dame. So impressive victory for them. Tennessee looked awesome against NC State. That is a game that stood out to me, just dismantling the Wolfpack. And of course, goes without saying, Texas, just absolutely just shellacking poor Michigan. Michigan's going to have trouble with that offense this year. Simple as that. You can say all you want. The defense did their best to try to hang in there, but their offense is a major concern, and they're missing J.J. McCarthy right now at the quarterback spot. And they don't have a great assortment of quality at the receiver position either, and they're hurting a little bit there as well. And that's something that obviously once they got way behind Texas, and for as good as their defense is, C-Mac, that's now a couple of games from Quinn Ewers that stick out to me. First, he's had some games where he's looked average, but boy, oh boy, he's looked great this year. The offensive line looks incredible for Texas. They're just pushing people off the line of scrimmage, that Longhorns offensive line, and they did it to a very good Michigan defensive line on Saturday. That's now 2 standout performances from Quinn Ewers. The win against Texas on the roads this past Saturday reminded me of the way he played against Alabama on the road last year, where it was probably the other best game of his college career with Texas. Was that performance in Tuscaloosa last year. This is right up there, what he did in Ann Arbor on Saturday.
Oh, that was just dominant. And you know what? It starts out of both. His quarterback play was great and the weapons they have. But you talked about the offensive line, both offensive line and defensive line. We go when we even look at it. Yeah, we cap these games even. We look at that kind of the inside out. in college football when we go through these, especially early on in the year when we were going through this last month, who's in, who's out, the transfer, all that stuff. And yeah, they hats off to Texas to go in there and just a Michigan team off the, winning the championship, Harbaugh gone, all these whispers about the program, all the stuff that's going around it. And just don't have, the playmakers right now, the quarterback, defense hung in there like you talked about, but it just wasn't enough. Texas.
No, it was not, no doubt. So those were some of the games that stood out from last week. But now that's in the past. It's on to this week, and we will begin, as we always do, with our weeknight college football slate. We have one game on Thursday night. It's a pretty interesting game, at least to me. Arizona State and Texas State. We've got the Texas State Bobcats hosting a Power 4 opponent here. Arizona State 2-point road favorites. The total 58.5 here in this game. This is on Thursday night, standalone game. These are two of the look, coming into the season, I was very high on Texas State. I said with Jordan McLeod coming in at quarterback, they're not going to lose a thing with Finley transferring out. Their offense is still going to be great because G.J. Kinney, the head coach, is a good offensive-minded head coach. They've got a great system, great offense, and that's the strength of this Texas State team. And man alive, did they put that on display against UTSA. They ran over the Road Runners. They weren't the Road Runners on Saturday. Texas State was the Road Graders. I mean, they just ran right over UTSA in that game, a dominant 49-10 whipping. And UTSA is not chopped liver. I know that, they don't have Frank Harris anymore, but they returned a lot on both sides of the ball, still expected to contend in the AAC. And Texas State just handed it to them on Saturday, just completely dominated that game. They're a very good team. This is a team that I think can compete in a game like this, as evidenced by the point spread against ASU. But ASU is a team that I have upgraded in my own college football power ratings as much, if not more, than any team so far this season. They've looked awesome in 2 games. They destroyed Wyoming at home, wire-to-wire, comfortable win against Mississippi State. Now, they did take their foot off the gas, I think, with a big lead in the fourth quarter. Mississippi State did come back a little bit against them. But for the majority of that win Saturday, they were still in control. I've been impressed. Again, you talk about trench play, the O-line opening up holes for Scadaboo, the running back. I think Sam Levitt has been such a pleasant surprise at quarterback. Never thought this guy would be this good, and he's played pretty well. Didn't throw the ball as well against Mississippi State as he did against Wyoming, but he can run with it. Very impressed. So this is a very good Arizona. This is kind of like 2 teams I'd rather bet on. But here, so I don't have a strong feel for the side. But if you actually look at this from a spot perspective, Arizona State comes in off, a win that was a game that was important to them, circled on their schedule, certainly of the non-conference against Mississippi State, albeit a struggling SEC team. It's still an SEC team. Now you go on the road against Texas State. Is this game is significant to Arizona State? For Texas State, this game is significant. There's no question about that. I'll say this right now. If Texas State wins the Sun Belt, runs the table, which they could, but if they win that conference, which they obviously could, because I think they're one of the teams that's most talented in this Sun Belt, they could send a resume worthy of making the college football playoff if they can win this game here at home against a Power 4 opponent like Arizona State. So I think Texas State, they know this is a significant game as far as potential playoff resume is concerned down the road. So for that reason, I lean a little bit spot perspective based on that to Texas State +2. And I really like this team. The odds makers aren't sleeping on them. They're only a 2-point dog against a Power 4 opponent, but they're a 2-point dog only for a reason. It's a very good Texas State team, and I actually do lean with them here in this game for as much as I've upgraded Arizona State's power rating and how good they've looked. Dillingham's doing a nice job. It's finished strong last year. They've started strong this year. I think for Texas State, might be just a little bit more of a significant game for them than it is for the Sun Devils. What do you think here, C-Mac? Arizona State, Texas State.
Yeah, this is a good one here, on the lone game that we have. Arizona State, last week, I think you had them last week, right, Bavana? Again?
I laid a good number, 5.5, 6. And
5.
Got up to 7, and that's what helped me there.
Well, yep. Yeah, I stayed off in the end, but I would have went back to them, and they held on. Like you talked about, a great first half, for them. And they ran for like almost 350 yards. Scotabo was huge. I think he had like 240 right around there. I mean, Levitt, he didn't have to do enough. Now, even a team like Texas State, which I think is solid, he's got to go on the road. I mean, he only threw for like 60-something yards.
Yeah.
And when
First
you have a
road
lead
game
like that.
for ASU. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, first road game after 2 home. Nice wins, too. Wyoming and last week was Mississippi State. And they were up big, like you talked about. So how skewed is it a little bit? Chapin started throwing it around a little bit. They scored 14 in the fourth and got that 30-23. But I thought the defense last year was pretty good. You know, we've already talked about this with Arizona State. You know, I don't know how great this Texas State defense was. I was going back to last year. You know, a little bit worse against the pass, which was normal. They weren't horrible against the run. I mean, I think they were 71st. You know, and, you know, their first game, I don't know, take of it. That was a huge win at home versus UTSA. But, you know, they struggled that first game against Lamar. They did not look great, you know, winning a 37-27. So I think there's a lot of hype. I am big on this Texas State team, but this would be a huge game for Arizona State to go there and get a win. You know what I mean? And it's a very short number. It could even cover it. So this one's tough for me. I want to bet on both these teams as well. And I'm just staying off for right now. I kind of, looking at this total, I'm interested in the under if it goes a little bit higher. I just think we might be a little bit too high. I know these offenses can go, but you know, if we get to 60, I might look the other way. So good one, though. We got a few good games early in the week here.
Yeah, Texas State is somewhat up-tempo, but they're not blazing fast with their pace and their tempo. And Arizona State does not play fast. So tempo-wise, you know, middle of the pack here with these two teams. So, yeah, for me, the total's probably in a good spot. And I'm not rushing. Like, I'd rather bet on these teams, too. But if you made me lean one way or another, I think I really like Texas State this year. And I'm kind of leaning because I think this is a more significant win for them than it is for Arizona State if they get it. Quite honestly.
Yeah, it's a big game. You know, standalone, early, third leg.
Opponent. And if you want to make the playoff, and they believe they can, because if they Sun Belt's a good conference now, good group of 5 conferences, maybe one of the better group of 5 conferences. So if they win that conference, they can stake a case, lay a case to make the playoff. But I don't know if they can do it winning the conference and losing this game. I think the win in this game is still something they got to have if they're going to entertain aspirations of making the 12-team college football playoff. All right, Friday night, we've got UNLV and Kansas. One of 2 Friday night games. We've got Kansas 7-point home favorites, 57.5 the total in this game. Very disappointing, Kansas. I mean, that might be one of the worst games I've seen out of their quarterback, Jalen Daniels. A couple interceptions, inaccuracies in the road loss to Illinois last week. Now, give the Illini credit. Defensively, they played well. They didn't really let Devin Neal get going in the run game. And then, of course, you flip it around to Luke Altmaier. It might have been one of the better games he's played in a long time. A quarterback I'm not that big of a fan of, but he made plays when he had to, a couple of big pass plays, including a big touchdown to help Illinois to get that 23-17 win last week. But, yeah, for Jalen Daniels, I mean, you can't turn the ball over and throw 3 picks on the road, 3 interceptions and expect to win. You know, it's just not going to be easy for you. So we'll see how it goes here for Kansas as they look to bounce back. They're back home in Lawrence, where it's been a good home field, and they've been a very good home team over the years, last few years under Lance Leipold. We'll see if that continues. The question here is, what do we make of UNLV? Because they beat down, obviously, an outmanned Utah Tech team, 72-14 last weekend. They ended up having Matthew Sluka as their main quarterback for that one. Greg Burrell had a great game on the ground. Ricky White, outstanding at the receiver spot for UNLV. Very good offensive team for sure. How much better is that defense? Obviously, they played well last week, but a weaker opponent. They played awesome against Houston, a Houston offense that we know is not that great. Donovan Smith hasn't been that good. The Houston offense hasn't been that good. But to still win that game 27-7 against Houston in their opener, UNLV on the road, you got to be impressed. I'm not rushing to lay a full touchdown against Barry Odom in this point spread range. Barry Odom's been a pretty good underdog here with UNLV in his coaching career so far with the Rebels. I mean, I'm leaning UNLV here at 7 or better. And if it stays around this number, that's probably where my stance is going to be here toward taking the points rather than laying it with Kansas. The only concern is you got Kansas off a loss, Kansas back home. They've been very good at home, but I think at 7, I'm still leaning dog here with UNLV in this game. What do you think here, CMAC, UNLV, Kansas?
Yeah, one of the things I talked on Saturday, there wasn't a book there was just a few games where it's tough to get a team total, and UNLV was one of them. And I not that I didn't mind kind of the 40, because I thought they'd hang 50 on you. That team's awful, Utah Tech. I mean, I didn't see 72. I mean, they had 503 yards on the ground. Yeah. Ricky Wright had 3 TDs. It's been really good. The defense looked all right, and this UNLV team needs to be better. The turnovers have been great for them, and they're going to need a little bit more of that. On the other side, I liked Illinois. That was a great game, but turnovers was really it. The 3 picks, they lost a fumble, 4 turnovers in that one, and that was just rough. Daniels didn't look good. But Kansas coming back here home, this is where they've been at their best. It's just tough. I don't really want to fade UNLV. I think this is a game that they could lose, but they could be tight in this one. This last year, I forgot about this game. Bean played and threw for, just crazy. It was at UNLV here. Where is it? 49-36. He went crazy. I think he throw for 400 yards, 6 touchdowns. He had, 449. He had 3 picks. There was turnovers on both sides that game, just wild. And I think a little bit, I lean to the over here. I think we could get more points. UNLV played. We saw just what Houston's all about, and that under. We talked about how much we liked that last week with Oklahoma, Havana. But I think these are 2 teams that just are talent offensively. Kansas should get on the board early, so I think we can get points here and get over. I just think we'll get to a couple more. I thought it was pretty sharp here at 56.5. That was the lone thing, but I lean over. And it's tough. I think it's bounced back for Kansas, but I think UNLV can hang around. I'm just impressed the job Odom's done. Yeah, it's been great to watch here in Vegas.
Yeah, no doubt it has. Now the schedule, it will get a little more challenging for UNLV moving forward. They've got some real tough ones. They've got this game at Kansas. They've got Fresno and a much improved, and I think we can say that now, a much improved Syracuse team on deck as well, UNLV. So they're going to get tested here in the next few weeks. But like I said, Barry Odom's been phenomenal as an underdog. UNLV last year, same thing. And by the way, Connor liking the over. I kind of lean that way too. 7-1 to the over for UNLV in the last 8 games, dating back to last season. And you would think Jalen Daniels, if he cleans up the turnovers, Kansas should still move the football here a little bit against UNLV. Let's be honest, they're still a much better offense than Houston or Utah Tech. So that's going to be the challenge here for.
And Altmaier did his job, just to be quick, like you mentioned. Nothing flashy. We talked about in some of these games where I need these teams as dogs, even at home. He's clean. They're in it at least. They might not win it, and they were in it. That was great.
The other Friday night game is a pretty damn intriguing game too. Arizona, the Wildcats taking on Battle of Wildcats here. I just realized that. Wildcats versus Wildcats. Arizona Wildcats, Kansas State Wildcats. Kansas State 7-point home favorites, 58 the total in this one. For Kansas State, man, that was a emotional and physical barn burner that they played against Tulane last Saturday. Tulane gave them everything they could handle. You talk about another coach doing a great job. John Sumrall was expected to be a little bit of a retool for Tulane this year because Willie Fritz left. They lost their quarterback. They lost production on both sides of the ball, a significant amount. And here's Tulane. They destroyed a FCS opponent their first game. And then, of course, they gave Kansas State everything they could handle. I saw a lot of Kansas State there. I had to downgrade their defense. I didn't really like at all what I saw from their defense. Tulane ran the football down their throat. Mensah, the quarterback for Tulane, made some big plays through the air as well. I thought their defensive line got owned for a good part of that game along the line of scrimmage by Tulane. That's not a good sign, especially when Big 12 play starts for this K-State defense. So I'm at the point now where I'm saying I don't know if K-State's defense is good as we've seen in the past after the way Tulane moved that football effectively most of that game on Saturday. Now you got to deal with Noah Fafita. Teteroa McMillan might be one of the best receivers. He is one of the best receivers in college football right now. That is going to be a tough matchup here for Kansas State after what I saw from that defense against Tulane on Saturday. Flip it around. Don't get too caught up in Arizona's, lethargic showing against Northern Arizona over the weekend. I think it was just one of those, they had the game last week, Arizona, where they torched New Mexico. And then, of course, last week, an FCS opponent with this big Friday night trip to the Little Apple, Manhattan, Kansas on deck. So I think they might have, again, playing possum a little bit. They're going to play a lot better probably here in this game. It's a significant non-conference or actually it is a conference game because Arizona's in the in the Big 12 now. But, you look at this game, I think Arizona's. After what I saw from K-State's defense, I'm hesitant to lay 7. And I'll say this about their offense and Avery Johnson, their quarterback. Great athlete, can run, great runner. He's got to work on his pocket. I'm not sold on him as a thrower of the football just yet. Avery Johnson, he's got some room for improvement there as far as I'm concerned. That's not an accurate, that's not a consistent throwing quarterback at the moment from what I've seen with Kansas State so far. So, give me the Wildcats. Funny stuff, Gongs Clips. Funny. You're Wildcats either way in this one. But I'm going to make the case for Arizona at 7 or more. And this is another one. Look, lean over. I think Arizona with their offense, K-State's defense did not look good to me against Tulane, and they're going to be pressured here against that secondary in particular, which, again, I thought Tulane threw the ball pretty well against them too. Now you got to deal with Fafita. You got to deal with McMillan. You've got to deal with a lot of explosiveness and balance in this Arizona offense. I think that's going to be a tough task here for Kansas State. And again, to lay 7, you got to show up defensively. And I didn't like what I saw against Tulane as far as that side of the ball for Kansas State. What do you think here, C-Mac? Battle of Wildcats, Arizona, K-State.
Yeah, Mensa for Tulane, I thought he'd be all right, but he was throwing it around. And Tulane was a late Saturday morning ad for me. And, man, they were controlling that basically the whole game in that one. And to win it, they get the touchdown, and then that fumble recovery for about 40, 45 yards. That was it. And they just kind of held on in that one for K-State. But I wasn't impressed. I think Johnson's all right. I mean, that was good. They got out of there with a win. They are better here back at home. And they've been good straight up here at home. But they haven't been the best ATS team. And I don't know about laying this touchdown. We all I did a ton of money with Noah Fafita last year as dogs, and these come up. And, 2 games were just kind of ho-hum. And I don't think they looked great last week, but they got by. But I think they'll be ready for this one. I'm on the 7 here with Arizona, especially, I don't know. Is there 7.5? I haven't even looked at that today. I'm sure there's just 7s.
There's 7s pretty much across the board.
Yeah, across the board. Yeah.
There's a 7.5 at South Point in Las Vegas, your neck of the woods. Yeah.
I have South Point, so I might look at that. But Arizona here, I think they can do enough in this game. You mentioned how they got, both the offensive line and defensive line. I wasn't too impressed with K-State. And they'll be back here at home, but a touchdown, too much. I think, Fafita's the guy that keeps you in the game and makes some big plays, I think. It makes this maybe like a field goal type game.
Yeah, I think for Kansas State, that's the issue, right? Defensively, didn't see enough I liked, really, from them to be really all that enamored with laying a full touchdown with them.
And one team's been great against ATS, dating back the last 15 games, so this last year, and they've lost a couple. 11-4 ATS to a team in K-State who just hasn't been good against the number.
Now, you could say Arizona, and another thing, too, is both of these teams have really good balance. We know Arizona can throw it. We know they can run it, too, because they've got a good back, and Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, who transferred in, and DJ Giddens, of course, for Kansas State, pretty good running back. So there's balance in both of these offenses, too. So that's why I'm leaning over here with this total as well, 58. All right, let's go to Saturday, Oklahoma State, Tulsa. We've got Oklahoma State 20.5-point road favorites, 62.5 the total in this game. What a game that was, Oklahoma State and Arkansas last week, down to the wire. I'll give Alan Bowman credit. I've had a tough time trusting that guy because he can be good at times and he can be turnover prone at times. But when they were down big in that football game, They found a way to come back, especially on a day where Ollie Gordon got shut down. And you got to give Arkansas credit. I mean, Ollie Gordon, just 49 rushing yards on 17 attempts. I didn't see that coming, that the run defense for Arkansas was going to be that good. The fact that Alan Bowman, you would have told me 49 rushing yards for Ollie Gordon. I said, there's no way Oklahoma State's winning, because I didn't have enough faith and confidence in Alan Bowman in the passing game to be able to make up for not having a run game at all and having it shut down the way it is the way it was by Arkansas. Yet Alan Bowman overcame it. 326 passing yards. He made some big plays to Brennan Presley, Rashad Owens, and others. And when that team looked like, it looked like they were down and out. This was 21-7 at one point for Arkansas. He led them back in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. Presley was huge for them. They found a way to win it in overtime as well. And the one great run all day that Ollie Gordon had was the 12-yard run to win it in overtime, 39-31. As they converted the two, and then Arkansas got stopped after that. So hell of a football game. Game went over, which was happy. That was the bet I had on that game. But now, huge win like that, 2-0 to start the year, and you got this game against Tulsa when you have Utah, the mighty Utes, coming to town next week to Stillwater. So it's a bit of a tricky spot here. Big win against Arkansas, Utah coming up after this. Question is for Tulsa, though, can we trust Tulsa, even getting 3 touchdowns? I mean, they were competitive. They did cover the number against Arkansas State, 28-24 over the weekend. Still don't really love the defense. I think I need to see more from Kirk Francis, who's a very young quarterback who's won the job here for Tulsa. Again, defensively to Arkansas State, Connor Mack, they gave up almost 400 yards, and they did get outgained. And if you're giving up that kind of yardage and balance too, 141 through on the ground, 255 through the air for Arkansas State in that game. There could be some trouble here for Tulsa's defense against Oklahoma State. So it's one of those deals where it's definitely not a spot I'm laying it with Oklahoma State, but I don't know if I trust Tulsa enough. So it's a pass for me on this game. C-Mac, what do you think? Oklahoma State, Tulsa.
I mean, Oklahoma State's got to feel just great. The mistakes Arkansas made in the football game. You mentioned stopping Gordon, I think was good, but it was a little bit of both. They did a great job, and they were just down so much quick. You got to start throwing it a lot more, as much as you want to try to run it. But they did stifle them. I mean, they gave up almost 650 yards to Arkansas, 648. I mean, they took advantage in that second half and got back in it with some turnovers, and really Arkansas just shot themselves in the foot in that game. But yeah, they made plays in the end.
Bottom half run defense for Tulsa is what concerns me. I think this could be the game Ollie Gordon.
He breaks
like
out
Gordon again. Yeah.
I think both teams score. This is overpass here. Over in this game. I just Oklahoma State. I don't think they've looked good. And look, they kind of got away with it. They stretched out and made some plays too in that first game against South Dakota State. Pulled away 44. But South Dakota State, they moved the ball in that one as well. This is a good – I don't have enough with Tulsa here, with Kirk Francis, with this offense. I just don't know enough. You know what? They've been awful, too, at home. Looking at this last night. Their last 10 home games, 1-9 ATS. Now they're a huge dog here. And they've covered. They haven't played since 2021. They've covered the last 2 different teams there. Maybe they hang around because this is a little bit sleeper spot after the crazy win you mentioned for Oklahoma State. It's maybe a get in and get out. Can Tulsa hang around? For me, I'd like over 3 touchdowns. I kind of lean that way, but for me, I think you just take the over.
Yeah, I like Oklahoma State too much overall, and I don't trust Tulsa enough. That's where I'm at with that game. Over, like you, would be the thing I would consider most, if anything, in that game. North Texas and Texas Tech. Texas Tech 9.5-point home favorites, 68.5 the total in this game. And this opened as high as 12, and it's all the way down to 9.5 now. And I'm part of the group that grabbed North Texas already this week. I can't lay it with the Texas Tech right now. This is a mess. This is an absolute mess right now. Defensively, they have zero clue what they're doing. Okay, they have been horrific. I can't even stress it enough. Horrific on the defensive side of the football, Texas Tech. Terrible. through the first 2 games. Abilene Christian, the first game, we talked about it last week, 52 points on the board. 51 points on the board against Texas Tech. What do they have? 494 passing yards against that Texas Tech secondary. Washington State puts the 37th spot on the board in the Palouse late Saturday night against Texas Tech. John Mateer, that kid's actually fun to watch. He didn't really light it up in the passing game. The secondary played better in that game, but then the run defense falls apart. So against Abilene Christian, it was all through the air for the 51 points. Against Washington State, it was all on the ground in the 37 points they gave up. 301 rushing yards. John Mateer, the quarterback for Wazoo, had 197 of those rushing yards for the Cougars in that game. You can't lay it with this defense right now, period. Now, I know on North Texas's side, there's still questions about how good their own defense is. I mean, this is a defense that gave up 38 points to South Alabama in their first game. But their offense, with the TCU transfer quarterback, Connor Mack, Chandler Morris, he's been phenomenal. It's been absolutely tremendous for North Texas in these first 2 games. What are his numbers to start the year? You look at them. 2 games, 68.2% completions, already, over 700 passing yards, 7 touchdowns in 2 games, has had 3 picks. And you are talking about, albeit a bad power 4 defense, it's still a power 4 defense, but he's done more than enough good as opposed to bad that I think they're a live underdog here on the road. And again, you've got this little brother, big brother in-state thing going on. And more than anything, look, this is a defense that I can't lay this kind of a price tag with right now. Not to mention, as much as I like Baron Morton at quarterback for Texas Tech, he's still mistake prone, throws some bad interceptions, turnover worthy plays, bad decisions at times. Not what you want when you're talking about a double digit or close to double digit favorites. So for me, North Texas or pass. This is one of those deals where the over makes a lot of sense, but even in the Texas Tech Washington State game, that's the problem. A lot of these 60s so far have actually stayed under because, look, the new clock rules. The clock rolls a lot more now. You don't stop the clock after every first down anymore. And all of a sudden, you're seeing that affect totals. And it's not as easy as it used to be to see these games that are lined in the 60s, especially the mid to high 60s, go over the total. Although I can't bet it under, not with Texas Tech right now. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I've had a lot less, and I needed to see more. We talked about totals, so I get going on them as the season goes on. Unders were pretty good last week for me in a few of these games. And the only one, Oregon, I stayed off this one, just went Washington State, right? And they got the job done. But you were correct. Middle Tennessee couldn't score. And all they needed was 1 touchdown, Bavano, because I just went with the over in that game. I didn't mess with anything else. I thought, they could get 10 or 14 points. Old Miss gets 45, 50. So that was just one of my few losses that I had. Yeah, I'm not going to mess with this total. But North Texas, they're bad defensively. Like, even their last game was solid. Like, Stephen F. Austin's bad. This is a bad football, a little different in college basketball in years past. But they're not very good, and they gave up 20 to them. What was that score? 35-20, that last game. And they gave up a ton to South Alabama. But the offense looked really, really good. I thought that was a tough spot last week, and I was shocked that went down to a pick'em. Really. I mean, I thought that was one that could creep to 3. With Washington State. And Morton, just the turnovers were awful. This is a short trip for North Texas here to Lubbock. Yes, if you got over the 10, congrats, because I think they can hang around. This is a team, they're so bad defensively, and as a dog, I want them as many points as I can get. And every once in a while, they'll come out and beat South Alabama, and they were 6-point dogs or a touchdown, week 1. But their defense is so bad, they're just going to give a shit ton of points. But can they come back? But they're a team that's down by 4 touchdowns with Bano and could come back and cover for you because they had that offense is just so explosive. So I agree with you here. I mean, North Texas or nothing. That defense for Texas Tech, they need to get it together. And I don't know if this is the week.
Yeah, that's the question. What you can do, too, is if you're not totally sold on North Texas defense, you could either take the team total over or split it between the plus the points and the team total. That's another option, so that if they score 35 but they lose like 48-35, you're still going to cash your team total, even if the plus the points doesn't hit, the point spread doesn't hit for you. So that is definitely something to look for. And Chandler Morris was a great get by North Texas. I got to give them a lot of credit. I mean, he was expected to be a big time Power 4 quarterback in college football. And of course, he got bumped out at TCU. But great job by Eric Morris here, the second-year head coach here at North Texas, to get Chandler Morris in here, because he's a great fit. And this is a step down in class for him. Not so much, well, it might be a step down in class here the way Texas Tech's defense is played, but overall, you're playing against more manageable competition now in the AAC compared to, Power 4 defenses. So that should benefit Morris as the season goes on. All right, Alabama how about this? Alabama making a trip to Madison, Big Ten country here, for an early start Saturday kickoff with Wisconsin. Alabama, 15.5-point road favorites, 51 being the total here in this game. A lot of people, you talk about overreactions, a lot of people a little panicking about Alabama because they looked so lethargic for 3 quarters against South Florida on Saturday. Number one, South Florida is a damn good team this year. I think Alex Golesh and the Bulls are going to be really good this year. And I think their defense is a lot better. And Brown in the offense is solid and going to be really good. I think they're a really good football team. I'm not going to – now, look, Alabama should have played better. They were sloppy. They turned it over. There was the bad snap exchange in the fourth quarter where they turned – definitely they didn't play their A game. Nothing close to it, Alabama. But I don't think we want to push the panic button that Alabama, struggled as long as they did with South Florida in that game. On Saturday. And eventually in the fourth quarter, they pulled away. Obviously, they didn't come close to covering the number, which is a rarity, by the way, for Kalen DeBoer in non-conference play. Kalen DeBoer in non-conference play, especially as a bigger favorite, has been money in the bank until last week. But he's still got an excellent ATS record in his coaching career in non-conference play. To be quite honest with you, I think you're getting a little bit of a bargain here, discount on Alabama. Because quite honestly, I think this line could have been closer to 3 touchdowns if they didn't look so, lethargic against South Florida. And keep in mind, South Florida gave Alabama fits last year when Nick Saban was still there. Remember that game last year, South Florida, Alabama? That was a tough game, too, for Jalen Milroe against. So maybe it's something that Alex Golesh in South Florida throws at Alabama that, gives them some trouble. Because that's 2 years in a row they struggled to separate from South Florida. I still think overall in the trenches, the line of scrimmage, they're too much for Wisconsin. Wisconsin has not impressed me one bit, not one little bit here in 2 games this season. They struggled mightily against Western Michigan. They were 24-point dogs. They didn't even come close to covering. Western Michigan was leading in the second half of that game. And that's a Western Michigan team that just got absolutely crushed by Ohio State, by the way, over the weekend. That was not impressive. I'm not a Tyler Van Dyke fan. I'm not a big fan of this guy at quarterback. It's an offense that hasn't been clicking. It's a defense that I don't think it's nearly as good as we've seen from the past Wisconsin Badgers additions. This is a lay it with the favorite or nothing for me. In fact, wouldn't be shocked if Alabama makes my card. I think they look a lot better here, and I don't trust Wisconsin to hold up in the trenches against the Crimson Tide. And especially if they fall behind. Tyler Van Dyke leading this offense back through the back door, I'm not convinced of it. C-Mac, what do you think? Alabama, Wisconsin.
Yeah, when I put this, Tyler Van Dyke, big game, don't want him. Now it's there. He's at home. They're getting 2 touchdowns, but I don't want him. I just don't want this team, this Wisconsin. Now they've been favored a lot more, not a 2-touchdown dog at home, but they've been awful against the number the last couple of years. They just haven't been very good at all. It seems like he's going to make a few mistakes in this one. Yeah, I get it's the first 2 games, but nothing impressive. Even last week, it was ho-hum. They got out to a 14-0 lead and just kind of cruised. South Dakota scored, 10 in the third. They added a touchdown there late. It was 2013 there in the fourth. I can't back them. I can't do it. And for you to touch on, because that's what I want to hit on last night, is, I want to back this South Florida team more and more, especially in certain situations. We already kind of hinted at it last week that they were getting better last year, and I'm going to look to it. Yeah, Bama just kind of messed around, and they finally hit the big plays, broke away there late in that fourth quarter to stretch that. But they're the better team. inside and out. It's not the easiest place to play. I think Bama goes in there and wins, but I don't really want to lay, 2 touchdowns with them either. This is just, I'm off.
Nothing wrong with that.
Watch it for me here.
Yep, nothing wrong with that, having that opinion. Like I said, with Wisconsin, I'm looking at their overall numbers so far through the first couple of games. Again, Van Dyke, 2 games, 60.3% completions, 6 yards per attempt. It's fucking dink and dunk with this guy every single year. There's no explosiveness down, pushing the ball down the field vertically. Forget it with this guy. I mean, my gosh, 1 touchdown, and that's against Western Michigan and South Dakota. You have 1 touchdown pass in those 2 games combined. No, this is Alabama or nothing for me. I'm not interested in Wisconsin here in this game. Let me look at their defense too, as far as, they're not great against the run either. 121.5 rushing yards per game, 60th in the country, this Wisconsin defense so far this season. So I'm a little concerned about that. And I know Kalen DeBoer, is more of a pass-heavy guy, and the secondary's numbers are better for Wisconsin, but he's not taken Jalen Milroe's ability to run away from him. And we've seen that. He's more than willing to let Jalen Milroe run with the football when there's an opportunity. All right, Central Michigan and Illinois. We've got Illinois 20-point home favorites, 51 the total in this game. Here's another one of these classic situations. I think we talked about something similar, Oklahoma State-Tulsa, where Illinois is off a huge win against Kansas. Is the focus going to be there to take care of business here, laying almost 3 tutties at home in Champaign against a Central Michigan team that, I'll be honest, I don't love what I see from Central Michigan. Now, Central Connecticut State's horrible, so don't put too much into that first game. And then against FIU, and look, I really do think FIU's better, and I like Mike McIntyre, and I was on FIU plus 6.5 against Central Michigan on Saturday, but I did not see 52-16 coming. Wow. An absolute beatdown by Florida International over Central Michigan. 5 interceptions from Joe Labas, the quarterback here for Central Michigan. That's not going to get the job done at all. Kewan Jenkins was solid, efficient. They ran the football, but more than anything, they just feasted on Central Michigan as far as turnovers go, and they turned that game into a romp, 52-16. That being said, I've seen enough Illinois and Brett Bielema off a win like that. I'm not ready at 20-point favorites to take them in this type of a spot, or their quarterback, who did play well against Kansas and actually outplayed Daniels, quite honestly. But in this spot, I'm not ready for Illinois in this kind of a double-digit favorite price range. I'm just going back and looking to see this track record that Illinois has had as far as double-digit favorites are concerned against a power. Not a power, but a FBS opponent, I should say. There you go. I'm looking at it last year. We've got one data point right there that tells you how dubious it is, I think, to lay it with Illinois here. They were 16.5-point home favorites after playing Penn State last year and then Purdue on the road the following week. In between, they played a home game against Florida Atlantic, and they were 16.5-point favorites, and they won by 6, Illinois. So that tells you all you need to know. I think, if anything, you hold your nose and take a shot with CMU, Central Michigan, in this game. First half, full game split. Keep it small because I don't think they're particularly good, this Central Michigan team, but wouldn't shock me if they get an ugly cover. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I don't think they're very good, Central Michigan, or this defense. But I got what I want from Illinois last week. Home dogs, hit more than a field goal. And they end up getting it done. No way, no how. I'm laying 3 touchdowns. They could win this by 3 touchdowns, but there's no way.
At Nebraska. This is next week for Illinois, by the way. At Nebraska.
There you go. This is where maybe Luke Meyer messes around a little bit and has a bad game. And they win but don't cover. I don't want it. I want nothing with this.
Shows you how bad, though, Central Michigan is, because this is clearly a Central Michigan spot and a tough one for Illinois, and yet Illinois is taking the money. This has gone up from 18 to 20.
Yeah, people see that win, but the defense was, I thought, impressive, and they got the turnovers. And Central's just, their defense has not looked good.
No.
Early on. Like, even Illinois should run all over them.
That's the concern. That's why I'm keeping it small. But I know I've seen enough Illinois to know they're not always trustworthy in this kind of spot, laying a number like that. All right, Memphis and Florida State. Very interesting non-conference game here. Florida State, 7-point home favorites, 52 the total. I'm on Memphis. And I know there's another one where people are buying in that Florida State's eventually going to get their shit together. 7-point favorites now. They opened 5, so the money's come in on Florida State going into this game. And they are coming off a bye week as well, if I'm not mistaken. They didn't play this past weekend. Their last game was Boston College, the Labor Day Massacre, 28-13. But 2 very disappointing losses. They do have extra time to prepare. This is the Mike Norvell Bowl, too. Maybe people think, win one for the Gipper. Mike Norvell coaching against his old team, Memphis. Because remember, he did a nice job at Memphis. That's what got him the Florida State job here. But I'm not ready to lay 7 with this offense. DJ Uiagalelei has not looked good. The offense as a whole just has had trouble. Whether it's even running the football has been a chore for Florida State so far this season. 21 rushing yards is all they had against Boston College. I mean, they have no run game right now. And they have some running backs that were supposed to be good for them. Lawrence Toafili, Roydell Williams, who they got from Alabama, and yet they've had trouble running the football. I can't do it. Now, I know from a spot perspective, look, 0-2 team, lick their wounds, bye week, time to prepare, time to get everybody healthier. I get all that. That's all plus for Florida State here. But nothing I have seen with these 2 eyes tells me, yeah, let's lay 7 with Florida State, especially with their offense. Can't do it. Won't do it. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, and I don't, this has moved to 7. I mean, like, if you really liked Florida State and got a 6, but I don't want that either. I think this is, though, a do or die, like, huge game for them. It's just been, from all we've seen in these games, 2 big time games on TV, they've looked like dog shit.
Is this App State Clemson Part 2, where they've heard now for over a week going into this game how bad they are, the season's over, no playoffs, can't win the ACC now, and they lick their wounds and they come out storming because that's kind of what we saw to Clemson, obviously, against App State on Saturday night. Everyone's saying how shit they are after the Georgia game, and they came out and they just blew that. They just ended that game in the first quarter, essentially, against App State. I just don't know if Florida State's good enough, though, right now.
Yeah, I don't know either. One thing, this Memphis team has been good. Down the
They're very good on offense. I like Hannigan in the offense, but that
who they play?
You're right. That defense.
I thought Troy. That was one of my other losses
key,
here.
Right? Let's be real. That's the key. Memphis defense, we have questions, and we know Florida State's offense has been horseshit so far. Horseshit. There's no question. So what's going to win out in that matchup? The Memphis D or Florida State's struggling offense? That's what's going to determine this.
Exactly. But one thing, 8-2. Tough, close loss to SMU. They beat up like Temple last year. They beat Iowa State, wins against South Florida. And these are big games that go over. I don't know if the defense is that good. I like the over here a little bit. I know Memphis just stayed under, or if you pushed with them with 55. But it seems like Florida State's going to wake up, and I think Memphis can do enough. I'm not a bit impressed with Florida State's defense. I think they've been all right at times, who they played, especially if this gets a little lower. I don't think it does, but already at this number, I kind of lean to the over. I think Memphis can hang around a little bit too. They got a QB that's been there a long time.
Yeah.
Here, it seems like he's been there 20 years.
Yeah, Silverfield. This is a big test for Silverfield. This is a big game for him. This is a big game for this program. These are games that Memphis has had trouble winning in the past under Ryan Silverfield. They have not won a lot of these big time games, especially Power 4 opponents. But this is a Power 4 opponent that has that feel that they're vulnerable right now, that they're wounded. But can Memphis go in there to Tallahassee and take them down? That's the big question. It's a great watch. It's a fascinating game. I'm still in the camp where it's especially at 7 or better. It's Memphis or nothing for me. I got to see it first. Florida State.
Last week too, it just wasn't enough. I thought Troy could do a little bit more, and they kind of stumbled right away. I didn't score anything in that first quarter because I thought they could have got just a little bit and at least another touchdown on Memphis because this defense still isn't good for Memphis, I don't think. I don't know.
Memphis defense is supposed to be better this year. There's no question. It's supposed to be on paper the best Memphis defense they've had. But again, how much can you
Yeah,
take
I mean,
away
how
from
much
what
is that?
Memphis has faced
Yeah.
so far? With the first game was against what was it? New Orleans, or North Alabama, and then Troy, a rebuilding Troy program, by the way.
Yeah.
With so I can't make too much of what Memphis did on defense in those two games.
No way.
Even
I mean,
if
they gave up 40 plus
on offense. This is a tougher opponent offensively, in my opinion, than the first two games that Memphis faced. That's the issue. That's the concern. So maybe you're on to something.
Desperate team.
Yeah.
Desperate team here too with Florida State. Yeah. They have to, this big time.
Conservative if I take Memphis. I'm keeping it conservative if I end up moving on it. All right, Cincinnati and Miami O. We've got Cincinnati 2.5-point road favorites, 45.5 the total. Miami, Ohio, in-state battle against Cincinnati here. Cincinnati completely and utterly blew it last week against Pittsburgh. And I'm not a fan of Satterfield. That was a horrendous loss. They just absolutely melted down in the second half. Credit to Pitt. Eli Holstein, the quarterback, he looked awful in the first half. And then all of a sudden, they're up and down the field against that Cincy defense in the second half. They come all the way back. They win. I wish the scoring hadn't been so light in the first half because the over just barely fell short in that Pitt-Cincinnati game, which was frustrating because I saw Pitt's playing fast this year. Cincinnati, I thought could move the ball against Pitt, and yet, the too much not capitalizing and finishing drives in the first half, unfortunately, kept that game under the total. But what a comeback by Pitt. I did grab, and I posted it on Twitter X for those that noticed on Saturday. I'm going to start posting a lot of halftime bets this year. Two of them were Pitt and the second half over, and both of them cashed in that comeback win against Cincinnati on Saturday. But terrible loss for the Bearcats the way they started that game. Now they've got to try to regroup here against Miami O off that loss. And they didn't look that impressive, especially defensively against Towson either, Cincinnati in their first game. Like they're 0-4 against the spread. They're 2-8 dating back to last year, and they're 2-8 against the spread in their last 10 games dating back to last season. So this has been an overvalued team, Cincinnati. The question you have to ask yourself is Miami, a good team last year, obviously, won the MAC, but they lose their first game to Northwestern 13-6. They do have a bye week here. They only played the one game, and then they had a bye, so extra time to prepare for Chuck Martin and his coaching staff going into this game. I'd still lean Miami O here as a small home dog. I'm not laying points with Cincinnati. No way. 4 straight non-covers, 2-point spread covers in their last 10 games. Miami O is psyched for this game. Bye week with extra time to prepare. Brett Gabbert, it's not like he's that much inferior to Brendan Sorsby. I don't think so. Brendan Sorsby's okay, but Brett Gabbert, I think, is capable quarterback. And don't be fooled by the tough day against Northwestern, because there was a lot of wind that day. The weather was not cooperating down by that Lake Michigan where Northwestern is playing right now. I'm willing to give Miami O a mulligan for that performance, especially on offense against Northwestern. Bottom line is I ain't laying it with Cincy. It's Miami O or nothing for me in this game. C-Mac, what do you think here in this one?
Yeah, Cincinnati just awful collapse in the second half. Now they got to go here and play Miami. I can't back that football team, period, at all. I think the total's low here. I like this under, but I think it's a little bit too low. I don't know if I could bet it. If this was a little bit higher, something I could jump on, because I think Miami Ohio's defense comes to play, and that's the side I think to be on. I mean, it's short. It'd be better to have the 3.5 with them in a tight one, but that's the only way I could look here.
I'm in agreement with you there on that for sure. Shout out to everyone in the chat too. Hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Just want to Joseph Thompson, Kong's Clips, Chosen One, Ix Nizzle, good to see him in the chat. G Martinez, Johnny K, and picks from Dave. Good to see him. It's been a while. And in fact, I think Dave might be on the Monday Night Football live stream tonight. And if he, because I remember him being on it last year, and if he is, then I'll be seeing him, because I'll be on in the first half tonight with the Monday Night Football stream over on Pub with Jimmy the Bag for Jets and the 49ers tonight. So looking forward to that. But shout out to everyone in the chat. Appreciate you tuning in here on this edition of Hitting the Books. We're here every Monday, of course, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time, breaking down the upcoming week in college football. All right, Louisiana Tech, NC State. We've got NC State 22-point home favorites, 51 being the total in this game. I'll tell you what, here's NC State. Everyone saw it, right? Absolutely abysmal against Tennessee. It was just kind of men against boys. Nico Iamaleava ripped them apart on offense. Actually, the defense did a decent job in the first half, but they got wore down. The offense struggled. I got questions about Grayson McCall and this offensive line, the whole group. I mean, it's not looked good at all in 2 games against Western Carolina and Tennessee for this NC State offense. You definitely have to be concerned with what we've seen from them here in these first 2 games. Trouble running the ball, trouble, opening up holes, trouble protecting at times for McCall. And it's really come back to hurt them. I mean, they only rushed the ball for 39 yards against Tennessee. And even against Western Carolina, 203 on the ground, but it took a long time to get it going, for an NC State. So the offense has been kind of in shambles here in the first 2 games. And that's been disappointing because I expected a lot more. And, even the defense, they struggled with Western Carolina in the first game, gave up 21 points. Obviously, Tennessee did what they wanted. Problem is, I don't really think that highly of Louisiana Tech. I think this is a program kind of going in the opposite direction. They had a very unimpressive 25-17 win against Nicholls State in their last game. That's nothing to write home about here for Louisiana Tech. They do have a bye week. That does help them. Well, I know with Skip Holtz was the coach here. They were a very good double-digit road underdog, but Skip Holtz ain't walking through that door. And I don't think they're particularly well coached. The quarterback situation, I mean, the quarterback, Baker, for Louisiana Tech, CMAC, against Nicholls State only completed 50% of his passes. That's not something I love seeing here. And Sonny Cumbie, I'll be honest, I'm not impressed. So this is a clear pass. I can't lay 22 with NC State, and I don't think I trust the Bulldogs enough to take them. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like I got pretty lucky. I thought in that week 1, it was 7. I got a 6.5 in the middle of the day with La Tech. And they win bigger. They had 5 turnovers in the game. Nicholls shouldn't have scored 17. I mean, they should not that La Tech's got this great defense or anything, but 5 turnovers in that game. I mean, Baker had a couple. Turner had 1. They lost a few fumbles. I mean, that's the only reason why I think.
Keep in mind, Jack Turner got injured in the Nicholls game, and then Baker had to come in. He looked awful, quite honestly. So this is important. He's questionable right now, Jack Turner. Will he be available is the question on Saturday.
And La Tech were in years past, like you mentioned, this team was good as a dog. They've been awful. Last year, they weren't very good against the number. But on NC State, just tough times. We hit it at the top of Grayson McCall. I mean, maybe this is like a get-right game for him, but he looked awful. Tennessee looked great. I want nothing here. Maybe this gets over. Maybe, NC State does enough. Look to their team total, or, La Tech and gets them here too.
I think if it's Baker at quarterback, it stays under. And if Turner is at quarterback, there's probably a better chance then for points. But I also think NC State's defense is capable of a lot better than they've shown in the first. And this will be a step down from Tennessee, big time for them. So this might be a good thing for NC State. To be honest with you, here's the way I see it. If NC State plays their A game or A-plus game, like finally the offense looks good and the defense resembles the defense we saw from NC State a lot last year, they can win by 4 touchdowns here. But are we going to get that? That's the big question going into it. All right, next up, we've got LSU and South Carolina. ABC, this is a Saturday noon kickoff. We've got LSU 7-point road favorites, 50.5 being the total here in this game. Give me the points. How can I lay it with LSU? We've said this, it feels like over and over again, and we just keep on repeating ourselves that laying points with Brian Kelly and still a very shaky, suspect LSU defense. Now, was the defense a little bit better against USC in that first game than last year? Yeah, you could see they made some strides, but at the end of the day, when the game was there to be won, they couldn't get a stop. They still ended up giving up over 400 yards to Miller Moss and the Trojans there, especially the majority of them through the air. That's not what you want to see. Still don't have all that much confidence in their defense. Now, Nicholls State, 44-21 for them last week at home, but it took a while for them to finally put that team away. I mean, that game was 23-21 early in the third quarter. It was a 2-point ball game. And then finally, LSU put their foot down and got 3 unanswered touchdowns, ended up winning 44-21. But there's still concerns I have on the road laying points with LSU right now. I like Nussmeier. I like the offense. I don't think there's any issues there. They've got enough talent to move the football, but getting stops is still a question. Kyron Lacey, the receiver, has been great too. There's nothing I have issues with offensively with LSU. It's the defense still for them. That somehow, even against Nichols last week, Nichols gets, almost 300 yards against them. The one concern I would have, it seems like LSU has been worse in the secondary. And I guess what I would be worried about, though, with South Carolina is that do they have enough in the passing game? It's not like Lenora Sellers has been throwing the ball a ton or he's been all that efficient in the passing game. A lot of their damage has been more so on the ground than it's been through the air. And their defense and their special teams, which shockingly was not that great in their first game against Old Dominion. But boy, you got to be impressed with their defense. Either you got to be impressed with South Carolina's defense against Kentucky, or you just have to downgrade Kentucky's offense and Vandegrift, the quarterback, a ton, because Vandegrift was pathetic in that game. 3 for 10, 1 interception. I can't believe it after how good he looked, albeit Southern Miss, but still to have that kind of a fall off in terms of his play. The Georgia transfer was bad for him against South Carolina, and you got to give the Shane Beamer defense a lot of credit for the way they played. And if they can play that well, now this is not Kentucky's. The one thing I'll say, LSU's offense will probably be a lot tougher than Kentucky's, but still, that defense really impressed me. They blew up the line of scrimmage against Kentucky repeatedly. And if they can do that here, and again, Nussmeier doesn't have the mobility that Jaden Daniels did, maybe it'll be enough for South Carolina to hang around here. So for me, it's Gamecocks at 7 or better or nothing. I want nothing to do with laying a number like this with LSU on the road. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, they still just don't have, the offense wasn't impressive at all for South Carolina. But that defense, Kentucky, 46 for 139. That's not great. It was all right. At 44 pass yards, like you mentioned. Just awful. And I was at the Westgate. I watched that whole second half. Just shut them down. It's just like Kentucky was just gone there. They scored that touchdown, and then the ending in the fourth quarter, that pick 6 for South Carolina. I still have issues, though, with this South Carolina offense a little bit. They are back here at home. I was impressed with the defense. And what do we get from LSU? Just kind of what do you take from that win? They beat up on a bad team here. It didn't look great. They have the weapons, though. Like you mentioned, Lacey's looked really good. They got the Liberty transfer. That's really good. I think they'll get him more involved as well. But, yeah, this is South Carolina here for me as well. As a home dog, I think they could keep this game at least close.
All right, next up, Arkansas State, Michigan. Michigan, 22.5-point home favorites, 45.5 the total. Spot-wise, look, you would think Michigan doesn't overlook this opponent after getting absolutely just torn apart, ripped apart, shredded, embarrassed at home by Texas in the big showdown last weekend. But now they're 0-2 against the number under Sharon Moore. 20.5-point favorites against Fresno. They won by 20, and it shouldn't have even been that close because one of the touchdowns for Michigan was a pick 6 late in the game. So they didn't even sniff really a point spread cover there. They get absolutely crushed by Texas. Their offensive line's not been good. Davis Warren is just, how bad is Alex Orji? They can't give fucking Alex Orji a shot with how rough it's been for Davis Warren in these first 2 games. Donovan Edwards at the run game has been bottled up. Colston Loveland, 2 games in a row, is by far their best threat in the passing game, and he's not even a receiver. He's a tight end. He's one of the best tight ends in the country, but speaks volumes about how they have 0 right now, nothing that they can count on at receiver right now for this Michigan team. So that's a problem. Arkansas State, as an underdog, they've been, since they went to Jalen Rayner, who became their quarterback midway through last season, this has been a team that from a point spread standpoint, when they've been underdogs, they've been very good in this role. They lost by only 10 against Coastal. They won out. Now, these are all Sun Belt teams. I get it. Louisiana Cajuns, they were dogs. They won by 20, 15.5-point dogs at South Alabama. They lost by 7. They whipped on a very good Texas State team last year, 77-31. I still don't trust, even against a Sun Belt team at home, non-conference play, I don't trust Michigan's offense is more than a 3-touchdown favorite. Arkansas State or pass for me. Simple as that. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I just don't think this is really the time I want to be laying this with Michigan. I think they could win and cover just how bad Arkansas State is. But can Rayner make some plays against this Michigan defense? Because they still have a pretty good defense. It took Texas was that good. We all kind of knew about it. I mean, they were 7-point favorites, in the Big House, and made some big
USC
plays.
next week at home, by the way, Michigan. So,
yeah, I still think they win this. I'm not laying it either. Yeah. I don't have enough here with Arkansas State. They played that close game against Tulsa. The defense still looked pretty bad. Both those defenses are very good. So, yeah, this is a wait. If Arkansas State could score, I mean, can this Michigan team just shut them down? Maybe their team total under.
There's a big defensive gap between these teams. The Arkansas State defense is still a little rough. Yeah.
But the Michigan offense, these are like the games where they need to get some kind of rhythm and get going. Just everyone, from the line, everything for this Michigan offense. Yeah.
It's still dog or pass for me. No friggin' way with that offense and at Davis Warren in my laying, especially in a sandwich spot with coming off. But now you'd think they're going to be fired up and ready to beat down somebody. But still, you got USC on deck in the offense, even against an Arkansas State defense that can be Swiss cheese at times. I'm a little worried that they can, with that offense, was a favorite.
Let's see if they can make some big plays. I mean, of course, they want to run it and just probably they can run it down their throat, but.
You got to show. I think so. You got to try to open it up a little bit in this game if you're Michigan. And show you can create some big plays, because if you can't do it at home against Arkansas State, when the hell are you going to do it or be able to do it? So I agree with that. All right, Boston College and Missouri. Missouri 16.5-point home favorites, 54 the total in this game. Obviously, look, Boston College. Not a surprise, but I guess surprise because. They were a bigger underdog against Florida State, but they still won in impressive fashion. We'll see if they can carry that over here to this game against the Missouri Tigers. But there's no doubt they were impressive, obviously, against Florida State in that Labor Day game. I like Castellanos. The key for him is he can't make mistakes. He can't have those just mind-numbing, brutal turnovers that too many times we saw from him last season. But what I like about the Florida State win, even though he only threw 16 times, he completed 10 of those passes. He was efficient. He let the run game take care of the rest with Robichaux, and of course the defense, which was excellent against Florida State. And then they played Duquesne last week, and again, it was a great performance from Castellanos, very efficient. Now again, Duquesne, you can't take too much from that, but still, it's been a great 2-0 start for Bill O'Brien here. Let's give him credit here with what he's done at Boston College. But we're going into the deep end of the pool here. Missouri is not only they're one of the better top, 3, 4, 5 teams in the SEC probably this season, Missouri. And when you look at what they've done here in the first 2 games, they haven't given up a point. Now it's Murray State and Buffalo, but still 89-0 combined score, covered the number as big favorites. Very impressive. I like Brady Cook. I like Luther Burden at receiver, Theo Weiss. They're loaded at receiver. They're a phenomenal offensive team. They're going to be able to put up points. And that Nate Noel they got in the transfer portal from App State to be their new running back, too. Big-time addition. Love this Missouri offense. The defense last year was great, much improved. This year it was expected to take a step back. You would say probably hasn't and maybe won't take a step back based on their first 2 games. They haven't given up a point yet. But you do have to remember it's Murray State and Buffalo. Boston College will be a little bit of a better test. But I don't know. To me, this feels like a game where Boston College is being given, guys, to me, before that Florida State game, Missouri would be laying a little bit more than this. I'm kind of with chosen one here. It feels like maybe the point spread's a little bit lighter on Missouri because Boston College dismantled Florida State, which we now know is a Florida State team with issues. So I don't know. I'm not ready to get there with BC. It feels like they're getting a lot of points the way they've looked so far, but on the road, Missouri's a different animal to me. Yeah, I'd lean Missouri. I don't know if I'll get there, but I'd lean Missouri. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a little bit of one that's just early in the year. Like Missouri, 2 wins, 2 shutouts, versus 2 no-names. They've looked very good. Missouri's been great dating back to last year, though. Winning games, covering games.
Yeah.
Even, the loss with Georgia was tight. I mean, this team is good at home. Cook's solid quarterback. Both these guys, Castellanos here on the road, you mentioned, both need to take care of the ball, which could be big. But he's looked, these first 2 games.
The number for Mizzou last 9 games, 8-1.
Excellent, yep. Very good. A team in years past has struggled with ATS at times that could lay an egg. Boston College, like, is this defense any better too? Like, it was Florida State. I thought they looked pretty good, and then they just beat up on Duquesne. So there's just a lot of questions there, and it seemed like this line would be better because I want more with BC. Maybe look their way, at least over 17, because I think they could hang around. I worry that the turnovers on the road with Castellanos. It's going to happen soon. He's looked really, really good. I don't want the haters come out chirping about it. I think he's been great, but this is a big one here on the road, and this is a wait for me. I just couldn't make a move either way on this.
All right, Texas A&M, Florida, SEC matchup here. Texas A&M 4.5-point road favorites, 47 the total in this game. Buy low for me on the better team, better coach, much better coach, even though they lost to Notre Dame in their first game, who just lost to Northern Illinois. I get it. But I'll take my chances any day with Mike Elko as my coach over Billy Napier. Simple as that. Much better defense still. Let's not forget they did play good on defense against Notre Dame, but offensively they struggled. Miami, we're not fearful of that swamp in Gainesville. It's not a strong home field at all. We saw Miami go in there and destroy them. It looks like they're going to go with both quarterbacks. Billy Napier's already said he's going to play both Graham Mertz and Lagway, DJ Lagway, the quarterback that came in and finished the Miami game. I don't like that, going back and forth between the two quarterbacks. This is still, to me, an excellent A&M defense. It's a Florida team that doesn't scare me. Things are falling apart. Who cares that they beat Samford? I couldn't give two shits about that. Let's see what they do against a real team, an FPS team, a good SEC team. I still think A&M can have a good season, and I think it starts here with a bounce-back performance against Florida. They're just a much better defensive team. I mean, Florida's secondary was pathetic against Miami, and that defense just it wasn't any good last year, Florida's defense. I think this is a bounce-back, too, for Connor Wegman's heard it here the last couple weeks, how much he struggled against Notre Dame. I think this is kind of a get-right game for him. Here in this one. And Florida beat A&M a couple years ago, 41-24, when Jimbo was here and the season was falling apart. And I think this is get-right time for the Aggies here. I'll lay the small number with them on the road. C-Mac, what do you think?
I get it. I don't, though. I really don't want either of these two teams at all, because just the Florida defense, that's the biggest one in this one. I mean, Lagway looked good. But yeah, I don't like if they're going to go in and out against Texas A&M. He beat up on Samford. They got some solid running backs, this Florida. But yeah, just too many question marks in this one. And A&M, even though I think they could go in there and win this, I really don't want to trust. The biggest thing is that defense, if you like it, because Wegman, I think he's all right. College quarterback, I think he can make the plays. So yeah, this one I am off. I'd like to be on Florida. I can't right now. I just can't. Not with that defense, even here in the swamp.
Okay, so next up we have a game that is usually on rivalry weekend, usually Thanksgiving, Black Friday, long holiday weekend, late November. It's always usually when we see this game. And for some reason, here it's September 9th, week 3 of the season, and it's happening now. The Apple Cup. Washington State and Washington. And same thing with the Civil War. We're going to get to that in a moment. They're having that game this weekend, too. It's usually a late November rivalry weekend game. What the hell are we doing here? College football with your schedule. But nevertheless, Washington State, Washington is this week, this Saturday. 4-point home favorites, Washington, 56 the total. This is another one where I lean dog. I'm not ready to lay 4 with Washington. And look, I like Jed Fish in the higher, but they struggled to move the football against Eastern Michigan last week. I was on the big points with Chris Creighton and his phenomenal road underdog role at Eastern Michigan, and pretty much a wire-to-wire point spread cover. And it took Washington a very long time to get any sort of offense going in that game last week against Eastern Michigan. Now we'll have to see if they can fare a little bit better here against Washington State. Washington State defensively, are there still concerns? Yeah. I mean, we saw them give up 30 to Portland State. They played pretty good, though, against Texas Tech. And going back to last year, they've covered 4 straight games overall. You look at the series history last year in Washington, and that was a phenomenal Washington team with Michael Penix, with Kalen DeBoer last season. And in the Apple Cup, Washington life and death, 24-21 win against Wazoo. Washington State actually outgained Washington 381 to 306 total yards. And I like John Mateer. Still got to get polished as a thrower and a passer, but he's got incredible wheels. This is, you look at this big, lanky white kid, Mateer, and you think, how can he run like that? But he can. He was ripping apart Texas Tech Saturday night with his feet. Very impressed with the athleticism and the mobility of John Mateer here for this Washington State team on offense. And offense has certainly not been their issue, and it has been an issue for Jed Fish and for Washington, for the Washington Huskies in their first few games. I'm not saying that Will Rogers is been bad, but I think it's just taken time for him to get comfortable here. The Mississippi State transfer with his new team. Yeah, for me, I look again, a 3-point game last year, and that was a lot better Washington team not a lot better, but it was definitely a better Washington team, and a team that lost a lot from that team last year is now here this year. I think Washington State as a dog I'm interested in them +4. And by the way, this is a neutral field game. This is not a true home game for Washington. It is in Seattle, so I guess you could say still an advantage for the Huskies, but it's at Lumen Field where the Seahawks play. This is not on Washington's campus. So keep that in mind. C-Mac, what do you think here? Apple Cup in September.
Yeah, I know. It's a little weird that we got this going on in September. I'm going to dig into a little bit more. Washington does have, when I was glancing at last night, some injuries I got to go through in the secondary, tight ends and their line a little bit more. Yeah, I love Washington State last week. Right, one thing, he had 200 yards on the ground. I got to see him throw it a little bit more. But you're right. He was running wild there against horrible Texas Tech defense. It's not very good. And this is another one where I haven't seen enough of Washington with the two games to make of them delay this points either. I just haven't seen it. I mean, you play Weber State, Eastern Michigan, 30-9. Not enough for me, especially. I don't know if their defense is really this good.
There he is. I put it up on the screen. Does that look like a guy that looks like a super fast running quarterback to you? That's John Mateer for Washington State.
Sometimes you don't got to look it. You just got to, that's a fact. But yeah, he ran wild. I kind of like Washington State too. I just think, at this price, a little too much love here for Washington. So I lean that way as well.
Yep. I mean, what can you say? Like I said, for Washington State, it's I've been impressed with them offense. Again, I got to see this defense a little bit more. But look, Texas Tech was bottled up. They forced some turnovers. They were very opportunistic. 2 interceptions from Baron Morton. Opportunistic defense. Even though they gave up yards, they've been opportunistic. They forced turnovers, and we'll see if they can do that. Like I say, I've seen enough here of issues with Washington and good enough signs from Washington State to be interested in the Cougs here. +4 in this game. All right, next up, we go from the Apple Cup to the Civil War. Another one of these rivalries where it's normally late November, and we're getting it here this weekend. Oregon and Oregon State. We've got the Oregon Ducks, 16-point road favorites here. Total in this game sitting at 50 across the board. I mean, look, 0-2 against the spread and not even close to covering in either game for Oregon. So right away, I'm just like, whoa, let's pump the brakes here maybe on laying 16, especially coming off a huge win against Boise State. Big-time game, survived it, won it on a walk-off field goal, and now you're laying 16 here on the road against an Oregon State team that, look, I thought for Oregon State without Jonathan Smith and lost so much, he took his quarterback, Childs, with him to Michigan State as well. I thought, whoa, Oregon State may be in a little bit of trouble this year, but so far, pretty impressive. Now, San Diego State's got their own issues, but still, Giovanni McCoy was solid at quarterback. They ran the football well with Jam Griffin and Anthony Hankerson leading them, the dual running back tandem for Oregon State in the win against San Diego State. I was impressed with that. And all things considered, considering the cupboard was bare, considering the complete and utter retool that was going on here with Oregon State for just the first couple of games. Now, granted, they played an FCS team and San Diego State, but so far for Trent Bray in his first year as head coach here, I give him a thumbs up, sliding over from the DC. And maybe that's helped things because he was on Jonathan Smith's coaching staff as the DC. He slides over to the head coaching role, and maybe it's helped this Oregon State team, and the adjustment and the transition's been a little bit easier for them because of that. We know it's a rivalry game, so it's one of those things where anything can happen. And look, for Oregon, for the first game against Idaho, their offense didn't get it going. And then it was the Boise game where all of a sudden Dylan Gabriel and the offense played better and they got a big kick return touchdown. But then the defense struggled to contain it. Now, a lot of teams are going to fucking struggle to contain Ashton Genty. That guy's out of this world right now. He's fucking incredible. Unbelievable what we have seen from Ashton Genty here in the first 2 games of the season. But still, they haven't played complementary football, Oregon, in their first 2 games. The offense struggled against Idaho first game. Defense struggled against Boise in the second game. And you got to play complementary football if you're going to cover a number like this and play well for 60 minutes. So I haven't moved on this game yet, but it certainly looks to me, point spread wise, the power rating's been a little bit too high on Oregon in the first 2 games because they haven't come close to covering the number these first 2 games. And I'm not rushing out there in a rivalry game to lay 16 with them here. C-Mac, what do you think? Civil War.
Yeah, last year too was one of those games. Oregon was clicking, beat them and covered the number, but normally this is tight, even when Oregon's really good.
31-7 last year. Yeah. Yep. Now we're in Corvallis this time, though.
We're in Corvallis. I'm going to wait. I don't think this touches 17. I mean, I'll get the best number I can. I'm going to be on Oregon State. I was on that under. I mean, I didn't think the offense still has a little bit of issues with Oregon State, but this Oregon defense hasn't looked great. I thought the defense, even though San Diego State has their problems, to be able to shut them out, I thought was very, very good. Or nothing's just clicking like you mentioned with Oregon. They're week 1, and it was all penalties too, just sloppy, a little sloppy again this week. Then big plays.
Dan Lanning mentioned it. We got to clean it up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, just total. And then big plays and just horrible 3-and-outs. And you mentioned the punt return, stuff like the defense looked flashy and good, and then they've just gotten gashed. I think there's just going to take more to get going here with this Oregon team. And right now, this defense isn't very good. I'm on Oregon State.
If I'm not mistaken, too, let me see what Oregon's got coming. Does Oregon have that? It's at UCLA, so it's not the biggest.
I remember this game was last week
down, but they'll be focused on this. But are they good enough right now? And are they playing just well enough at both sides of the football right now to cover? And look, I've been. The one thing that would concern me, and it concerned me last year when they played Oregon, is how do they handle that speed? They're just boatloads of speed again on this Oregon team. Is Oregon State able to contain that here this time around? I will mention, though, the last time in Corvallis with these 2 teams, wasn't it one of those barn burners? Yeah, in fact, Oregon State, the last 2 games here in Corvallis, they've won them outright. 38-34 a couple of years ago, and then 41-38 before that. So this has been a tough place for Oregon. The last 2 times they've made the trip here to Corvallis for this Civil War rivalry game. We'll see if they're in for a battle again here on Saturday. All right, so we go from another rivalry game. What the fuck's going on? What is this, rivalry weekend here all of a sudden? Is in the early September? Backyard brawl time. West Virginia, Pittsburgh. West Virginia, 2.5-point road favorite, 60.5 the total. They're still a better team, in my opinion, West Virginia. Give me West Virginia less than a field goal here with Garrett Green, that great offense. There's no shame. Penn State was a bad game for them. They got back on track last week, beat the hell out of Albany in an FCS home game. Pitt was lucky as shit. Let's be real. They probably should have lost to Cincinnati. Cincinnati spit the bit, coughed up a lung. For a half, that offense looked terrible. For a half, the defense for Pitt looked terrible. Then all of a sudden, it was like the complete opposite in the second half. Defense got stops, shut down Sorsby and the Bearcats offense, and then Eli Holstein got it going, and Pitt came all the way back from a double-digit deficit and won. A big win like that, comeback win. I know they're 2-0. They've looked pretty solid for outside of the first half against Cincinnati, but I still think I've got West Virginia as the better of these 2 teams, and in anything less than a field goal, I'm looking at West Virginia here in this game. Pitt's not one of those home field advantages, too. They just play where the Steelers play, right? Heinz Field there. It's not the biggest home edge by any stretch of the imagination. I like Garrett Green a lot at quarterback. Yeah, there's still some questions about West Virginia's defense, which is also why I like the over in this game. Pitt playing fast. Other than I don't know what happened to Holstein in the first half, because the whole offense, and especially him was terrible against Cincinnati. And then all of a sudden in the second half, they just flipped the switch and they up and down the field scoring points, and they look like they did against Kent State the week before that. So hopefully that's the Pitt offense we see. I think West Virginia can move the football. Look, with all due respect to Cincy and Kent State, West Virginia is a better offense for sure than both of those teams, and Pitt's defense is going to be in for a test here. So West Virginia and over for me in this game. C-Mac, what do you think? Backyard brawl.
Yeah, that's just Cincy, and you talked about just, man, asleep at the
wheel. They
wheel.
Pitt. Let's be real. They got away with one.
27-3. There's that late touchdown right at the end of the third. And then, just big play. And then the field goal late. Man, that was awful. Those are the games you look at how to lose a football game. There you go, with Cincinnati. And then when they get the lead, it's just this horrible play calling while the other team's driving, making big play, you know what I mean? Then they go out and then it's a 3 and out. But Holsey, I thought, in the second half late, he threw it. But I like Green, too, better. I think West Virginia is a little bit better here as well. I'm not, crazy about this, but I think they're the team to back. Maybe they don't win huge, but I think they could go, in there and win a tight one or buy a touchdown here for them.
Yeah, and that's the key, where the number is. Would I want to lay 6.5, 7 with West Virginia here? No.
Yeah.
But just in a straight-up win situation where if you win, you probably cover the number, I'm comfortable here taking West Virginia. All right, Tulane and Oklahoma. Oklahoma, 14-point home favorites, 50 the total in this game. So I warned you guys last week with Oklahoma, and we don't always get it right. Believe me, I had a Carolina in the NFL yesterday. That's proof. I don't always get it right. But when you look at Oklahoma, I said on the show last week, that offensive line really worries me. Because there were times against Temple, and I know they had the big, 51-7 or something. They won that game. Even in that game, they were giving up sacks. They couldn't run the football consistently, holding penalties. That was against Temple, okay, a couple weeks ago. And I said, I'm worried about that moving forward. And sure enough, they play Houston last week, and the offense was not good. Not good at all for Oklahoma in that game. Offensive line issues again. In that game. 3 sacks given up. Tackles for loss in the backfield. How many tackles for loss did Houston have on Oklahoma? Hard to get the run game going as well in that one. Barnes, Javonte Barnes couldn't run the football. Jackson Arnold, 19 of 32, pedestrian numbers, 174 through the air, pass protection. He was under duress quite a bit from Houston in that game. That's now 2 games where I've seen enough from Oklahoma's offense where there's some concerns there. And like I said, even in that 51-point game, Temple is one of the they might be the worst team, believe it or not, in FBS college football this year, Temple. And even in that game, there were some concerns that the O-line was struggling. And then it finally came home to roost against Houston. I mean, they nearly lost that game, 16-12. They escaped by the skin of their teeth. Houston had 318 total yards. They outgained Oklahoma in that game significantly, 318-249. There's no freaking way I'm laying 14 with Oklahoma here. And in fact, Tulane, I was impressed with how they look. That defensive line for Tulane got after Avery Johnson, got after K-State, minimized DJ Gittins in the run game, and Oklahoma's got real offensive line concerns that I think Tulane might be able to make some hay with. In this game. At 14 or better, give me the wave. I'm riding this wave with Tulane here in this game. This is another scary matchup for Oklahoma. This is not your average group of 5 team. This is a team that they got the holdovers from the Fritz era. John Sumrall's recruited, and he did really nice in the transfer portal. He got some nice Power 4 players through the transfer portal, and you can see it. And this Mensa kid, who everybody passed over at quarterback and didn't recruit him, and other teams ended up going with someone else. He is now finally getting an opportunity, and he's making the most of it. He's been really good here at quarterback for Tulane. I've been impressed with Darian Mensa here in these. He was in competition with Kai Horton, who's been here forever as a quarterback, an incumbent with tons of experience, and Ty Thompson, I think, is the other guy who is a USC transfer, if I'm not mistaken. And Mensa beat him out for the quarterback spot, which tells you how good he might be and how good he's played so far. So, yeah, at this number, it would be Tulane for me. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, same thing here. Tulane. I mean, there's a little bit of problems with Oklahoma. And one of the things I thought they do better how is this defense, was Smith, 24-28, 260. And they had their share. They lost a fumble. He threw a pick in that game. It could have been even closer. And they got a late safety. It was 14-12 in that game. And that was all that was in that fourth quarter. I just wasn't impressed. Arnold was okay, 19-32. They didn't really run it. They had about 70 yards in that one against a Houston team that has problems, but I just saw UNLV like soundly kind of just ground and pound their way and beat them. And what you mentioned, I saw Tulane. I thought both sides of the ball were pretty good. They might not go in there and win, but at 2 touchdowns, I think you got to take them here, especially with this showing this total here at 50.
Yeah, though I think look. By the way, I want to point this out as well. Tulane got screwed at the end of that Kansas State game. That was not offensive pass interference. What a bogus call that was. And look, I didn't have anything on that game. Well, I actually had Kansas State in a money line parlay because I thought they'd win. Was not convinced they'd cover, and sure enough, they didn't. So actually, it benefited me, and even I was livid because actually part of me wanted to see Tulane win that game and pull the upset. That was a joke that they called offensive pass interference on that what looked like a game-tying touchdown there at the end for Tulane. That was a terrible call, and they have nothing to now. Again, putting it all out there and falling short like that against Kansas State at home. You got to go on the road. I'm a little concerned about that, but I think the fact they go on the road, they're playing Oklahoma out of the SEC, gets these kids fired up all over again for the best performance they can put out there for Tulane in this game. So I still like them here in this spot. All right, Nevada and Minnesota. Next up here. Interesting. We've got Mountain West versus Big Ten here. Minnesota currently 16-point home favorites, 43.5 the total in this game. We saw Max Brosmer, the New Hampshire transfer at quarterback, not look great, and the offense not look great in that loss to North Carolina to begin the season. Now, obviously, they took a step down in class last week with their game, and obviously the results were a lot different. But now you got to face and say what you will about Nevada. Choate here, the quarterback here, or the coach here for Nevada, has done a nice job. You look at it. They almost beat SMU. They went on the road. They beat Troy as underdogs. They did take a step back against Georgia Southern, losing 20-17. That's what Brendan Lewis can do. Take a step back. He kind of did in that game. But they also had some turnover issues. A fumble there really hurt them. The passing game really hurt as well. J.C. French moved the football well through the air in the win against Nevada, no question. But, when you're talking about Minnesota, you've only seen them play twice. They lost to the good team they played. They beat up on Rhode Island 48-0 last week. But long-term, Minnesota in this price range is not something I'm ready to go to the well with. Not to mention, I remember, and you might have even been on this as well last year, CMAC. I remember they were in the favorite price range of like 21 points against Eastern Michigan, and they never once got close to covering that number against Eastern Michigan at home last year. They were 11-point underdogs or 11-point favorites at home or on the road at Northwestern. They lost in overtime. Just long term, if you go back and look at PJ Fleck in Minnesota as a double-digit favorite, it's not been pretty. And so I'd probably have to lean Nevada. Am I rushing to bet Nevada? I think maybe last week might have been a little bit of a sign that maybe they played a little over their head against SMU and Troy. And I'm not a big Brendan Lewis fan on the road and I think Minnesota's defense is still pretty solid. But I'm not laying it with Minnesota. It would be a small bet only toward Nevada for me if I get involved. Lean under as well. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, I lean the under in this game. And this is a class, we'll get to a few of these teams. Nevada's playing, a Troy team that's not great, but they beat them. They played SMU tough. Now they're home too quickly, and they're even just a favorite, and it was just like 1 point, and they lose. Just remember that. Lewis was right.
But here's the thing, too. Even the SMU, everyone's praising Nevada for the SMU performance. Look at SMU now. They're not
SMU, man. They look rough.
Terrible.
Yeah. But for what they are, I mean, it was solid. Yeah, went back to last year. In some games, they played these teams kind of tough and hung around. I mean, there's no way I'm laying this with Minnesota. With this offense, like, they'll run it here. be conservative. I got to see way more. There's just no way I do it. Yeah, I want nothing with this game. I lean the under.
All right, Notre Dame and Purdue. We've got Notre Dame 11.5-point road favorites, 45.5 the total in this game. Oh, man. This is going to be interesting to see how this one goes. But obviously, Notre Dame is going to be looking to pick themselves up off the mat from that absolutely jarring, stunning, flooring loss to Northern Illinois, whatever you want to call it. 28.5-point favorites, Notre Dame. They lose 16-14 against Northern Illinois. Obviously, this is a spot where you would think the focus is there for Purdue coming off a loss like that. But you got to lay 11.5 here. With an offense that, look, even in the win against A&M wasn't great with Riley Leonard. It obviously wasn't any good after that first drive last week against Northern Illinois. That would be your concern here going into this game here from a Notre Dame standpoint. And again, I'm looking back to the last time that we saw Notre Dame lose a game like this in the Marcus Freeman era. It was 26-20. Remember that game to Marshall, 20-point favorites? Couple of years ago. They lost 26-21 at home. The next week, they were 13.5-point favorites against Cal at home. They won, but they only won by 7. So they did not cover, and that would not be good enough, obviously, a win by 7 here to cover this number. So I ain't laying it still with Notre Dame, even though this is a bounce-back spot. The question is, how good is Purdue? I'm not sure yet, because they beat up Indiana State 49-0 in their first game, an FCS opponent. They had a bye week last week. They didn't play. So this is their first game against an FBS team. And I know this wasn't a very good team last year. Their defense was terrible. And even their quarterback play, I'm still not the biggest Hudson Card fan. I'm not. He's a guy that there's a reason he's not at Texas anymore. you know that, right? So he's a middling quarterback. Let's put it that way. That's the way I kind of see it from him right now for Purdue. And I don't know how much better this defense is for Purdue this year. I'm not gleaming too much from a shutout win against Indiana State as a sign that the defense is back on track. So this is probably a pass for me. I'd probably lean Purdue, but I'm not rushing to bet him. C-Mac, what do you think?
That's how I feel a little bit. I don't know one game, Indiana State, how this, because I don't think that defense was very good. Even the last 2 years or so, this is not the old, solid defense of Purdue. And I still have questions with Hudson Card. He's got a good arm, but he can make some mistakes. One thing, this Notre Dame defense is still good. In this one, this total's starting to get low. They know it here, 45.5. I kind of look that way. I wish this was a little bit higher. Notre Dame, too, they should be pissed and win this, but I don't want to lay this on the road.
Leonard just not being right, or maybe never.
He looks off
the level he did prior to the injury.
We hit it at the top of the show. He just doesn't look right. There's still the problems with the offensive line issues, and it showed there, in that second half, especially watching that game. One thing, Notre Dame's owned Purdue, though. They just whipped, whether they've been at home or not. What is this here? 9 of 10. A few of those games have been close. Purdue's at home. Purdue or nothing here. That way, and lean under in this game. This is one I just don't know if I get to with Notre Dame off the loss and everything. But I'd be on Purdue.
Well, the thing that has me leaning Purdue is looking back 2 years ago to that Marshall loss, that 3-touchdown favorite home loss to Marshall that Notre Dame had. And the next week, they didn't pound the piss out of the opponent. They didn't beat the shit out of their next opponent. They won by 7 as a double-digit favorite. They didn't come out smoking. They didn't come out storming after a loss like that. So that's why I'm worried, if you didn't do it against Marshall coming out storming after a loss like that 2 years ago with the same coach, why should I trust you as 11.5-point favorites to do it this time around after losing to Northern Illinois? So that's kind of where I stand with that one. All right, we've got App State and East Carolina. App State, 2.5-point road favorites, 58.5 the total. Look, I've had to downgrade App State. Joey Aguilar's not playing at the same level. And more importantly, this defense, even in the first game they played this season against the FCS opponent, didn't look good. I mean, that FCS opponent was moving the football up and down for a good portion of that game against Appalachian State. ETSU, And I know they pulled away eventually, but they didn't cover. They got absolutely just destroyed by Clemson. That's alarming that Cade Klubnik and that offense just did whatever they wanted. Cade Klubnik's running for 51-yard fucking touchdown runs against that App State defense. Now, that App State defense has been horrible so far. ETSU moved the ball against them. They give up a 66 spot to Clemson. I know there's pride of the team that lost by 46 looking to bounce back, but they've now failed to cover 4 straight dating back to last year, App State. I've had to downgrade them significantly. Meanwhile, I think East Carolina is kind of going in the other direction. The arrow's pointing up on Mike Houston's East Carolina team. Now, I know they played Norfolk State and Old Dominion in the first 2 games. Not the greatest of competition, but the defense has been really solid. Now, Jake Garcia, I look at it as a positive. He was a turnover machine against Old Dominion last week, the quarterback for ECU, Jake Garcia. But the fact he threw 4 interceptions and that they overcame it and they still won the game and covered, that's a positive. That's a big-time positive in my book for East Carolina. That you're not supposed to win games and cover point spreads with 4 fucking interceptions from your quarterback. That's just not supposed to happen. But they still did against Old Dominion in spite of the 4 INTs from Jake Garcia in that game. You know, I like Rajay Harris in the run game. And more importantly, this App State defense laying points on the road, no thanks. So for me, it's East Carolina if I'm betting this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't really want much in this game, except I'm looking at the under. I think this number is a little bit too high. I'd love for it if it even goes
East Carolina's
a little bit.
playing faster. I do want to point that out tempo-wise a little bit.
They are.
Yeah.
This team's been money for me to the under last year. And one thing gives me a little bit of pause is App State. I mean, they just gave up 66. Their defense, isn't the best. I think they'll get back this week and hopefully contain it. But still, even with East Carolina playing faster, they're just not a crazy offensive team, and that's why I cashed a ton with them to the under. So I'm looking at the under in this game. I just don't want to side.
All right, good stuff indeed. All right, next up as we continue along, we've got, let me just see here. There we go, Troy and Iowa. We've got Iowa 22.5-point home favorites, 39 the total. Look, it's a long show. We got lots of games. Pass. I've got nothing to say about Troy and Iowa. I'm not laying 22.5 with the Iowa Hawkeyes, but I'm telling you what, with Troy, this looks like a way down. They're way down. You talk about downgrading a team from last year to this year. You have to do that with Troy. Troy is nothing close. They're a shell of what they were last year. Losing John Summerall was huge. I figured, look, it was going to be a challenging first season at the helm here for Gerard Parker, his first season as head coach, and he's very young too, this guy. So this has been definitely an adjustment for him. I think in time you'll see Troy bounce back, but you can't like what you've seen. They get ripped by Memphis. They lose as favorites against Nevada in their first game. I worry about that offense doing anything here against Iowa's defense on the road, but the Cade McNamara and the Iowa offense, which had a great first half against Iowa State, but they did nothing in the second half and couldn't move the football, and Iowa State comes back and beats them in that Cy-Hawk rivalry game. This is the easiest pass for me. I'm not laying it, and I don't want Troy because I think they're way down as well. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if you look at this one, I'd even look at Troy's team total under. I don't know how they score. One thing in that game, it was just a flash of that third quarter where there was those big plays, and it just went back. The first half was slow. Iowa looked good, and the fourth quarter, more of it. But that was enough big plays that got that game over. That slightly got it over. But it wasn't much. But there were some big plays. It was weird to see in a game like that. Some breakaways, too, busted plays. But I think Iowa wins here. I'm not laying 22.5 at all. I just had a little bit more with Troy. That was one of my losses last week. I touched on it. I thought I had 19.5. I thought they could get kind of a late score because I thought they could move it a little bit more against Memphis. And they didn't. They lost by 21. But, yeah, I'd still look under, or Troy, team total under.
UAB Arkansas. Arkansas 24-point home favorites, 59 the total. So I took UL Monroe last week. I added a little more on Saturday, and after that game ended, I'm like, I should have put even more on it. That was that stuck out like a sore thumb. First of all, how the hell can anyone trust UAB laying double digits on the road? And I know we're talking ULM, one of the worst teams in the Sun Belt and in the FBS for the last few years. But you couldn't trust UAB's defense on the road laying that number. And more than anything, it was the intangibles and the coaching angle going into that game. Brian Vincent, the new head coach at UL Monroe, going against the team that did not retain him as head coach when he took over. Remember, Bill Clark retired, stepped down from UAB. Brian Vincent was the interim coach the rest of that year for UAB. The players loved him, and they had a pretty good finish to the year. But UAB AD and the department decided, we're not keeping you, Brian Vincent. We're going in another direction for head coach. See you later. Pack your bags. And Trent Dilfer they hired, which is an abysmal hire, as far as abysmal hire. Terrible. They're going to rue the day they hired that guy, Trent Dilfer, as their head coach. And you can make damn sure that when he saw Brian Vincent, after taking over this job, that he was going to face the team that did not keep him as coach and hired Dilfer instead, that would become the ultimate stick it to the man game for Brian Vincent. That this guy was going to he was going to stay up all night if it meant designing a game plan to beat this UAB team on Saturday. And sure enough, what did we see? It was a laugher. It wasn't even competitive. UL Monroe is what, 11 and a half, 12-point underdog in that game. They beat the fucking brakes, pounded the piss out of UAB in that game. It was not even a ball game, 32-6 in favor of ULM in that game. Way to go, Brian Vincent. I loved it. Loved seeing that. He got screwed. And the players wanted him. The UAB players that season when he took over in the interim for Bill Clark, they wanted him to be the permanent head coach. They pleaded with their athletic department head to say, we want this guy. And they didn't listen. They said, see ya. We don't want you. Way to go, Brian Vincent. What a job, for UL Monroe, leading them to that victory, 32-6. Zeno struggled. They couldn't run the football. Meanwhile, one of my favorite quarterbacks and names in all of college football, General Booty for UL Monroe, was pretty solid at the quarterback spot. And more than anything, they just made life miserable on UAB in that football game. And like I said, way to go for ULM. Outstanding, really in all sides. They had a pick six as well. Defense was good. Offense was good. And UAB just looked terrible. Absolutely brutal. And you talk about coaching. They hired Dilfer instead of Brian Vincent. You tell me which team looked more fucking prepared last week for that game between UAB and UL Monroe. Yeah, probably the coach you should have kept at UAB, Brian Vincent. So looking back on it, that was a great angle to go with. And I'll be honest, for me in this game with UAB Arkansas, now they are getting a lot of points, and the offense with Zeno is still capable. But I think for Arkansas, after that frustrating loss to Oklahoma State, they might be ready to beat the hell out of somebody. This is favored or nothing for me personally. I might even go Arkansas first half, Arkansas full game, split it up. I think Talon Green and the offense can do what they want. Again, the UAB's defense to me is still not very good. And on the flip side, I think Arkansas, after the loss last week, the stinging loss, you're going to see them not screw around here with UAB and be looking to make a statement. So definitely leaning favorite here. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you look at Arkansas first half. I mean, you look at their team total too. I mean, if Green's going to chuck it like that, I mean, he should do well against this UAB defense. As you mentioned, Zeno was horrible. I mean, 167 a pick. They had a couple 3 turnovers.
Yeah.
And hats off, to having that. And Moreau. And General Booty. G Booty. Yeah, great name. I love that name. Congrats to them. Yeah, I think Arkansas rolls in this one. I mean, can UAB offense kind of get anything going? I mean, UAB against Arkansas. Like, if they can, Zeno, like maybe they could hang around. But I'd have to see it. They did all right last year in certain games. They would have all right, and that offense would kind of go weird, and for a half at a time. And I'd scratch my head. And you mentioned the coaching, Dilfer. We've gone through that, kind of last year. That whole hire, it was like, what's going on? So, Arkansas or nothing.
And if you think that fucking win for Coach Brian Vincent didn't matter against UAB, the team that didn't retain him, go to Brian Vincent's Twitter It's at Coach, but I think, let me just make sure I get it right. It's at Bryant Vincent 44, Coach Bryant Vincent, ULM head coach. He's retweeting all these comments that Twitter's making about what a terrible look it is for UAB, that you get dominated by your handpicked guy as a coach when you ran out the guy in year one of his era. So he enjoyed that, clearly. He enjoyed beating UAB last week, as he should. No question about that. UAB is just not good. They're not well coached, and I think they're probably walking into a bit of a buzzsaw here in Fayetteville on Saturday. All right, next up we've got, as we continue along here, Utah. What is this? This is the new rivalry weekend here. This is Utah State.
Week 3.
Next up, in the middle of September, I guess. To hell with it being in late November like we've known it for all our lives. Okay, whatever. Utah 21.5-point road favorites, 46.5 the total here in this game. That was pretty rough for Utah State last week, right? That being said, it was rough for Utah's offense the moment Cam Rising left the game, and I lose Utah -14 because of it. The offense stunk after Rising left that game. They didn't do anything in the second half, and Baylor comes through the back door and covers, where there's no chance in hell Utah does not cover that game if Cam Rising doesn't leave due to injury. So that was frustrating, to be sure, last week in that game against Baylor, because they're up 23-0 at halftime, and the offense doesn't work with Isaiah Wilson, I think was his name, the new quarterback, Isaac Wilson. After that, it was not good, and they end up only winning by 11. Didn't score in the second half. So we're going to have to see if Cam Rising is good to go here. The latest update from Kyle Whittingham in that front was day-to-day. We'll see how he progresses through the week. Again, it's a hand injury. He avoided serious injury. He could return this week to start against Utah State. But again, that's not confirmed. Put it this way. I don't want Utah State. This program's in shambles. The Blake Anderson fiasco. I don't trust Bryson Barnes or Spencer Petras. Bryson Barnes was not very good against USC, albeit with USC could be pretty good, really good. But I don't trust Utah State. But after what I saw from Utah's offense against Baylor without Cam Rising, no friggin' way I'm laying 3 touchdowns with Utah either. C-Mac, what do you think?
I mean, yeah, without it, even though it's a rivalry, they could, but I don't want to at all. That first half I thought looked pretty good. It was just ugly the second, though, watching that game with Baylor and Utah. And now what they have to get done. Utah State, I mean, just to get nothing. SC's defense, better maybe. I mean, but last year it seems like even this horrible team with quarterback issues, playing everybody.
USC's maybe second or third string defense at the end of that fourth quarter against Utah State, and they still couldn't move the ball and put points on the board.
Still couldn't move it at all. I mean, they threw for 100 yards.
Starting offense still on the field for Utah State. Yeah.
Yeah. And they went with Barnes. They don't even know. It's tough times for
really tough
Utah State, where the last 2 years where they had a pretty good run there, where they're a decent
under in this game if Cam Rising doesn't play. You jump the hell right on this under if he's out.
Yeah, it seems like Utah could still just smother him here, and Utah State's defense is no good. We've seen that they are garbage. Utah could still maybe cover, but yeah, it's not one that I really want to be involved with.
Virginia Tech, Old Dominion. Virginia Tech 14-point road favorites, 50 the total in this game. I mean, Old Dominion nearly beat South Carolina, who just whipped Kentucky. And Old Dominion, they lost to East Carolina last week, but winnable game. They were competitive. And here's another case of, look, Virginia Tech's been a tick overvalued early in the season. They lose outright as double-digit road favorites at Vanderbilt, first game. Second game against Marshall, they had to grind their way to a double-digit win, but fell short of the cover. No, it does feel like now Virginia Tech, the market after that great run they had with Chiron Drones last year down the stretch, market's caught up to Virginia Tech. And look, this is an in-state game, right? Old Dominion as well in the state of Virginia. They've been plucky in this underdog role. For me, I'm leaning ODU and the points here. Now, Grant Wilson's still a concern for me at quarterback. He can play good. Yeah. He can look awful. But Old Dominion's defense has hung in there, played better than I expected. Virginia Tech's offense has not been firing on all cylinders, even with Drones. I mean, they've been up and down. They've stalled. in extended portions of each of the first 2 games against Marshall and Vanderbilt. So I don't know. I'd be leaning to home underdog here a little bit. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I am. Wilson is pretty key here. And that Old Dominion team, they haven't been able to convert. That was why they should have beat South Carolina. You can't settle for field goals or just getting shut out there. And it happened, last week with Garcia. You mentioned all the picks. They couldn't get anything done with it. They have to be able to convert because, like, that defense of theirs is not that bad. And that's why I love that under last week. That game when I saw it hit 54.5, I jumped on the under. It opened 49. I kind of like it here. One thing, though, Virginia Tech's been more of an over team, while Old Dominion, which I've been on, have been on unders. And, I've been dating back to last year. And one thing with Old Dominion, soon as they're a favorite, like last week, even one, dating back to last year, Western Kentucky -4.5 loss. Georgia Southern favored by 2.5, won 25-24. They don't cover. When they've been a dog and a double-digit dog, they've covered. And they're going to keep this game on the ground. I haven't been impressed with Virginia Tech. You talked about a little bit of the rivalry. I'm on the Old Dominion here. I'm on the points. I lean under. There's not a ton of value here at this spot. Like last week for ECU getting to 54.5, I thought was great value. So I'd lean that way, but yeah, give me the points here.
The dilemma with Old Dominion totals right now is they're playing a lot faster on offense, but they're not always efficient.
They're not doing anything. Yeah.
They're playing fast, and they're turning it over. They're stalling. They're missing field goals. They're not converting in the red zone.
Yeah. And Wilson hasn't been sharp. I mean, it's just he's looked a lot better in a few weeks. I know he's not the best, but I think he's a solid college quarterback. And yeah, he just hasn't been too sharp, and they just haven't been able to punch it in so far.
It's been a big issue. Yeah. So again, the pace and the tempo tells me this should be an over team, Old Dominion. But again, just offensive efficiency and getting it done and putting the biscuit in the basket, putting the ball in the end zone has been tricky for them. No question so far. All right, UConn and Duke. Duke 17-point home favorites, 47.5 the total. Last time we saw UConn play an FBS team was Maryland in week 1, and they got ripped. I mean, it was just despicable.
I was on it.
I'm a little leery trusting them again because the last time I trust them against middle of the pack Big Ten team, this is a middle of the pack ACC team, Duke. They got shredded 50-7. Both of their games have gone over the total. I'm actually leaning over the total. I mean, we've only got 47.5 here. The UConn offense hopefully gives me something unlike the Maryland game. We'll have to see where they turn at quarterback because they've gone back and forth between the 2 quarterbacks. But Fagnano, I think, is more so the guy that they're going to rely on moving forward. And because Evers was terrible against Maryland, and Fagnano started the next game against Maryland. I think Joe Fagnano's back at the quarterback spot again, the guy that played most of last year, because Evers didn't show me anything when he played against Maryland. He was terrible. I think UConn can do a little something offensively here. I keep thinking, Connor Mack, that Duke and their offense with Malik Murphy, the Texas transfer, he's getting better. He struggled a little against Elon, but they got it rolling in the second half against Northwestern, and it was windy as fuck in Northwestern Friday night. So that's why that game was so low scoring. If the weather's fine, UConn's defense still might be ass because Maryland just lit them up. And I don't trust anything with their defense against Merrimack. Who the hell cares? It's Merrimack. It's going to be in tough here against Duke. And I think UConn's own offense can chip in some points as well. So I think at 47.5, that's the bet I like the most here. Play over a lower total. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, I kind of lean to the under in this game. It's that UConn defense, though, I don't trust. So I'm kind of looking at, when I looked at this game, was the UConn team total under.
Yep.
I just haven't seen it. The quarterback carousel. I think they go with Fagnano. I think he's probably the best option, but he still isn't great. Duke, I think the defense is pretty solid. It's just the first few weeks. But a team like this, I think they could hold down here a little bit. So that's where I'd look in this one. I think Duke wins. It's not crazy. Games like this, laying 17.5, good luck. In long term, I don't know how much cash you'll be making in college football.
All right, Ole Miss and Wake Forest. Ole Miss 23.5-point road favorite, 63.5 the total. I mean, look, it was Furman and it was Middle Tennessee State in these first couple of games here for Ole Miss. So let's not get too carried away. but my goodness, Jackson Dart looks just outstanding. Like, he looks like he's in the Heisman running in the court from the quarterback position. If he can now, again, the competition is going to get tougher for Ole Miss moving forward. But he's been this is as good as I've seen him play, and he played awesome in the bowl game. Don't forget that against Penn State, the Peach Bowl last year. He lit up a very good Penn State team, very good Penn State defense. So Jackson Dart is selling me right now on being one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now. There's no question about that. What do they put up? 128 points, 76 and 52. I laid the big number. I told you, C-Mac, last week against Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee's ass. They're
horrible.
They're horrible. And Derek Mason was not a good hire by that program either. That's a program way just collapsing before our very eyes. I've got Middle Tennessee, one of the 5 worst teams in the country right now. That's how much they've fallen. That's how bad they look. Middle Tennessee. So this will be tougher. Now it's Wake Forest. It's a solid, decent team on the road. Let's see how Ole Miss handles it. But I'm not stepping in front of Ole Miss. And the one thing about Wake is you look at that defense, and they coughed up a lung in the second. And I'm thankful for it because I had Virginia plus 1.5 against Wake last week, and Wake gives up a huge lead. Anthony Calandria and the Cavaliers come all the way back, and they win 31-30. That's not a very good Wake defense. Still not totally sold on Bachmeier. I know Bachmeier still put up really good numbers, over 500 total yards, 403 through the air, and they still lose the game. But now he's playing an SEC defense in Ole Miss. Let's see how I'm still not a big Hank Bachmeier guy. Hank Bachmeier fan, never have been. He's transferred here, there, and everywhere for a reason because he's not been consistent enough at his other places he played. So I don't know if I'm going to lay with Ole Miss this time because now they're on the road, and Wake is still better than Furman and Middle Tennessee. But there's no way I'm taking Wake or trusting Wake and that defense against Jackson Dart right now. C-Mac, what do you think? Maybe the over in this game, if anything. What do you think?
Yeah, and to think Middle Tennessee just 1 touchdown, that game goes over. Actually, they covered too. Not that I wanted that, but they would have even covered and lost by 42. That's how bad they couldn't even get in the end zone. And Ole Miss, Jackson Dart looks great. They're great. This is a little bit somewhat of a test though. Like, go here and win big, by 4 touchdowns. I don't want it. That's for sure. And it's tough for me to trust Bachmeier, who threw it around. Just horrible fourth quarter for them to be up and don't score and give up 2 touchdowns and lose that game.
Virginia in the fourth quarter at all.
Yeah, they just couldn't stop them. So that a little bit scares the shit out of me. So maybe there is a ton of points. This is, a high total. Maybe if you like Ole Miss, stick to their team total.
I think both teams top 25 plays per minute. That's a great stat for pace and tempo. Plays per minute. And I think Wake are in the top 25.
They're a little bit up there. I don't have that. Are they up? Are they in the top 25 for sure? Yeah. You're looking at it? Okay.
Wake has always played fast under Clausen on offense.
Yeah. I kind of want to take the points here with Wake. So, just a lean. This is one a little bit for me. I'll look later in the week.
All right, next up, we've got Vanderbilt and Georgia State. We've got Vanderbilt 10-point road favorites, 46. I can't believe I'm laying points on the road with Vanderbilt, but I am. I laid it. I laid the number with Vanderbilt on the road. Am I nuts? Am I insane? Well, I guess we're going to find out on Saturday, but I don't think Georgia State's any good. I just don't think they are. Especially on offense. And look, I'm rooting for my guy from Ottawa, Ontario, here in Canada, Christian Veillere at quarterback for them, but he's not sold me yet on what he can do from that position. Meanwhile, look at Vandy here. The great win against Virginia Tech in the first week. I know last week they had a cupcake opponent, but everything I've seen from Diego Pavia, man, what a get this was by Vanderbilt bringing him in. He's just a winner. He's a gamer. Plays with a heart on his sleeve. Gives you everything he's got every single week. I think the defense is starting to get at least a little bit better now for Vanderbilt as well. It's the 3rd year for Clark Lee. So you think maybe finally there's going to be a little bit of progression in his 3rd season as the head coach. I think anything. I got 9.5. It's only gone up a half point. I think even at 10, you can still lay it with Vandy. I think they can get it done here. And I like what I've seen from the Commodores here this season so far. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I like Poly. I'm a big fan too. And I think this is a game they could go in, win, and cover. I just don't know with Georgia State. The defense still, I don't know what to make. They're not awful, but they played too close. Like Chattanooga, not that they gash, but had 232 through the air, 83 on the ground. Can they hold him down? I'm not so sure, but I'd already lost with him earlier, so this is a little tough for me. I was hoping we could get a little bit more. Not I'm hating on this 10, but a few more points because, and I don't know if I could turn to Georgia State again, just after seeing their offense and their defense. So right now I am off. Good luck on the Vandy.
All right, nothing wrong with that. Next up, we continue along. UTSA meet the Roadrunners taking on the Texas Longhorns. Texas 34.5-point home favorites, 53.5 the total. This is a tricky one. Nothing I've seen from Texas says, yeah, I'm running a bet against them right now. And I know they're laying a big number, but last time we saw them lay a big number like this against Colorado State, they did a number, on Colorado State, and they look awesome. They do. So awesome that I'm really, really not interested right now fading Texas, but this is that potential letdown flat spot coming off a huge road win against Michigan, a dominant road win for the Longhorns where they owned the trenches on both sides of the football. Quinn Ewers can't play a better game than that. He was absolutely outstanding on the road against a pretty capable defense. So it does have that kind of flat spot written all over it. If you look at Texas's schedule, they only play ULM though next week at home. They play UL Monroe. So there's not really a look ahead for Texas. And after what I saw from UTSA last week against Texas State, 49-10 beatdown at the hands of the Texas State Bobcats, Owen McCown's been disappointing. He didn't play that great against Kennesaw State in the first game either for UTSA. And then last week, he struggles so much that they bench him. 10 for 23, 105 yards. And then Marburger, Eddie Lee Marburger, takes over. Marburger in paradise, 14 for 27, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. No paradise with those stats. I'll tell you that for UTSA fans and UTSA backers. I can't trust UTSA at the quarterback spot, even though this could be a little letdown here for Texas. So probably a game I stay away from. C-Mac, any thoughts?
Yeah, it seems like, can UTSA maybe get something early where Texas could be a little bit flat, but I think Texas goes here, even with, if they get out to a lead the backups, or, you know what I mean? With Manning and that and the defense. I don't trust Marburger. He came in. They couldn't score, at all. They moved it a little bit. It couldn't get in the end zone versus Texas State, UTSA. I think if you look at Texas, I think, they get it done in the end, though. I would look to their just team total. I think they could creep over that in this game still.
All right, so maybe looking toward the Texas team total, if anything, here for C-Mac with this matchup. Yeah. Obviously, Jeff Traylor said it. We just wanted to create a spark. That's why we made the quarterback change. But they are going back to Owen McCown here. Like, we saw nothing out of Marburger. We got a Musburger, the great Brent. We got a Marburger, and he wasn't Marburger showed nothing to indicate to Jeff Traylor, I'm ready to take over as the starting quarterback. So they're going to give Owen McCown another chance here on Saturday against Texas, which I think is the right call. It's probably still more upside with him. He is the son of a former NFL quarterback. Let's not forget that, Owen McCown. So back to him at quarterback. Either way, I'm not sure it matters. Texas is that good. And again, unless they have a hangover early, but they have no look ahead because they play UL Monroe after this game. All right, Toledo and Mississippi State. Next up here, we've got Mississippi State 12-point home favorites, 56.5 the total. I actually kind of agree with the move, believe it or not. And I'm not big on Mississippi State, but I saw some for a tough start to the year for sure. Tough game against Arizona State. They didn't play well, but I saw a pulse from them. And once they got it rolling in the second half, they cut that lead down to 7. And they were almost close to getting the ball back for a chance to tie the game, but Arizona State was able to run out the clock. Positive signs for Blake Shapen in the offense in the second half. Positive signs for the defense, who played better in the second half. They didn't have a good first half, but they did play better in the second half. And as I've said countless occasions with Toledo, I'm not sure they're nearly as good as they've been in years past. I know their quarterback's very experienced in Tucker Gleason, but they did put up 38 points last week, but their defense is still shaky. They didn't cover against UMass. last week. Now, this time they're dogs. I get that. But you go back and look at MAC teams versus SEC teams in non-conference play, and there's been times I've taken a few too many MAC dogs against middling to below average SEC teams, and I've paid the price for it. And with this particular Toledo team, I'm not ready to do it. So for me, this is the lean to the favorite, but I don't know if I'm going to get involved in this one here. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree too. This seems like a good bounce back for Mississippi State, and it's moved. I don't know. It's gone a little bit too far. Like if you got in early on this,
the over's taking money. I could lean that way. I could see it.
Yeah, Mississippi State. I know Eastern Kentucky 56. The defense didn't look great early, and they put up a bunch of points kind of in that second half versus Arizona State. And if Chapin could do that, he should throw it around in this one again. So it's a little bit high, but I get the move. I think it is Mississippi State. I don't really want to lay 2 touchdowns with them, with Blake Chapin. You know what I mean, Babano? And there's not enough for me with Toledo. The defense isn't great. They could hang around. And you mentioned it's been tough for MAC teams. Hey, not last week. Northern Illinois, there's a few, but they've had some tough trips. If you got under the 10, I'd like that. If you got this, last night with Mississippi State.
All right, New Mexico and Auburn. Auburn 28.5-point home favorite, 61.5 the total. This has to be the game. Auburn's offense looks somewhat good, doesn't it? I mean, I know they lost to Cal, and I was on Cal. I know you like Cal.
Yep.
Of course, Cal. Justin Wilcox is a great double-digit underdog since he's been at Cal as the head coach, and we knew
that defense was good.
Yeah,
I was a little bit surprised that how well they played. Yeah.
They did. They played well. I didn't expect that from the Cal defense. The offense did enough with Fernando Mendoza at the quarterback spot, and again, typical Peyton Thorne. 4 interceptions, and that's the Peyton Thorne we've seen too much of. He's just not that great. But he could be not that great here, and they could probably still almost by accident score 40 points against this New Mexico defense. This New Mexico defense is awful. Look at the first 2 games for New Mexico. The Montana State game, they should have given up more than 35, honestly. Like, they gave up a shit ton of yards in that game against Montana State. They scored 31 themselves, but Montana State put up almost 600 total yards, 362 on the ground, 205 through the air. And that's the key going into this game, I think. New Mexico's run defense in particular, it's been gashed. It's been absolutely shredded. Arizona ran the football with success against them and ran for 205, threw for 422 against New Mexico last week. All Auburn might have to do is just hand the ball off, and they're going to be able to get big chunks and score at will. I mean, that's how bad. I mean, we're talking about a New Mexico defense that's given up like 1,200 total yards in the first 2 games combined. So I like the over. We're buying low on. I know it's a bad Auburn offense, but this is a even worse, I think, New Mexico defense that I think even Auburn is going to be able to score against. And I think New Mexico can chip in offensively in this game. They scored 39 against Arizona, 31 against Montana State. I like the athleticism and the mobility for Devin Dampier, their quarterback. And look, I do worry about their offensive line against Auburn's defensive line, but when you got an athlete like him who's been able to escape the pocket and run with the football, that could keep things alive for New Mexico here. So the over was the clear choice for me in this game. And I know you look at it and you say, how can you bet an over with Auburn right now? Well, this is the defense that could help make Auburn's offense right this week. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Oh, definitely. It was like the week before, Cal.
And, Auburn won't overlook New Mexico either after losing to Cal.
No. Like, I worry maybe a little bit the running with the clock, but this is the over from every, like Auburn should 50. New Mexico, I think, gets a little bit themselves in this one. New Mexico has just been one of the better, sneakier over teams dating back to last year, that defense, and how bad they were. And it seems like, Auburn's going to be pissed. They're going to get what they can. And, I think New Mexico can kind of hang in there as well. Maybe look Auburn team total, too. It seems like they should get that. But I think New Mexico could chip into this and get this game. Especially like last night, it was 59.5. In this kind of open, it's moved up a little bit, and it might move more. So, over.
Yeah, this has got to be the coming out party for Jarquez Hunter, the lead running back here for Auburn. Time to get him going, and this could be the game to get him going here against New Mexico's Swiss cheese defense. All right, Air Force and Baylor. We've got Baylor 15.5-point home favorites, 43 the total in this game. So you could look at that Utah game and say, man, I'm impressed with Baylor. Down 23-0. They end up losing by 11, but they had a really good second half on defense, and the offense actually started to move the football a little bit as that game progressed with DeQuan Finn, the Toledo transfer at quarterback. But you could also say, well, a lot of that was because Cam Rising got injured, and that was a big part in why Utah didn't score in the second half. But still, baby steps of improvement for Baylor. Do you want to lay 15.5 with them? I don't know if I'm there yet with it. But at the same point in time, there's issues with Air Force. That's the reason I took San Jose State last week against them, plus the points. They win outright, not even a sweat. The Air Force has got issues. This ain't the same Air Force team. And Troy Calhoun's done a great job with this program, always a competitive group, always a team that, is going to battle for 60 minutes. But this triple option doesn't look good. They only got 21 points against a bad Merrimack team in the first game. They only scored 7 last week against San Jose State. This is a much weaker triple option offense that Air Force has. To be honest, their defense hasn't been terrible, but they can't overcome what the struggles with the offense right now. So I'd be reluctant to take Air Force on the road with what I've seen so far from them. And Baylor's actually been a little bit better than I thought. So I'll lean slightly to Baylor, but maybe an under. It might be the even better approach here. What do you think here, CMAC, Air Force, Baylor?
Under. Team total under for Air Force. I don't know how. San Jose State, pretty good football team, but they don't have the best defense. They could give up some points, Bavano. And for them to score 7, 21-6 against Merrimack. This is like, old school, ugly, running it to triple. It's just going to be ugly. So, yeah, Air Force team total under. I even like the under in the full game, too.
Yeah, it's hard to dispute that. By the way, Baylor, I'm trying to look. Just want to get the run defense numbers, which is obviously the most important thing in this going into this game. They have been better against the pass. They haven't been great against the run. That is a little concerning. But I mean, Air Force is they've just not been very good on offense. It might be a game where even though the Baylor run defense numbers aren't that great, this might be a game where they still are able to contain Air Force here a little bit.
Utah was all right last week, 37 for 170. I thought the defense was decent. Yeah, in the second half. I mean, like I say, San Jose State kind of has that defense, and man, they only got 7.
Yeah,
That's
definitely the biggest concern right there. Is what they only scored against San Jose State's defense, and that tells me right away I'm not ready to trust that offense on the road against Baylor. Who actually, and then another thing you can say too is Baylor got toughened up having to play Utah on the road. Should serve them well for this game in particular. And moving forward. All right, UCF and TCU. We've got TCU 1.5-point home favorites in Fort Worth, 61.5 the total. I think it's wrong team favored here. I think UCF's the flat-out better football team. I do. I like UCF here to win outright on the road. Obviously, I like what I've seen from KJ Jefferson. I like what I've seen from the offense so far for Malzahn. They've moved the football extremely well. I know it was Sam Houston. Sam Houston State's a decent team. Decent team. They're going to probably be good in their conference this year, Conference USA. And that was impressive what UCF was able to do to them last week in that game. So I like what I saw from the UCF offense. The defense is the big question mark. Are they going to be able to, shore up here in this game? And I love R.J. Harvey. Who doesn't? That guy's a hell of a running back here for UCF as well. TCU, I wasn't that impressed against Stanford. I can tell you that. As someone that cashed a ticket taking Stanford plus the points in that game. I still think their defense is not that great. Offense, I got to see more from Josh Hoover. I know they beat up LIU 45-0 last week, but that doesn't really do much for me. And more than anything, this team's just 3-7 ATS their last 10 games, dating back to last year TCU. So I think there's a winnable game for UCF. I have them as the better team, not by a wide margin, but I do have them as the slightly better team. So getting points with them in a game I think they can win outright. Sign me up for UCF here. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, it's like it always is because it happens even year in, year out. Like UCF, against Sam Houston, but 380, 4 yards they had on the ground. Can they do this here on the road? They always seem to have very big at the bounce house, and they did. I think they can have some success in this one. And I think TCU, will be able to move the ball against them with Hoover. I lean over. This isn't like when I'm growing crazy, but I think it could get there. I'd love this was in more in the 50s, the high 50s. But I still think between these two teams, in the end, we could get to this over. Yeah, and UCF came out great in that game too, just right away. It seemed like it was like 21-0 out the gate. But this won't be easy at TCU. Two teams too, man. Especially TCU hasn't been good against the number, But can UCF go there and win outright? It might be tough.
It will indeed. All right, next we go to a SEC matchup. This will be your Saturday night game, I believe, with Chris Fowler and Herbie on ABC, Georgia and Kentucky. 23.5-point road favorites, Georgia, 45 the total. Wow. I mean, I saw Southern Miss. I heard about, they got a Georgia transfer in here at quarterback, Vandegrift. I saw how they played against Southern Miss. They pretty much dominated. I was expecting a lot more from Kentucky against South Carolina, who barely escaped Old Dominion at home. And I'm thinking, wow, I think Kentucky probably takes care of business. And they were awful, man. They were just horrendous on offense. The O-line was, they couldn't block. They couldn't protect. Vandegrift was a deer in the headlights running for his life. South Carolina just destroyed them in the trenches in that game. And now all of a sudden I've had to lower my opinion on Kentucky to the point where I don't know if I'm ready to, even with all these points, take them here against Georgia. So that's where I am. That's how much that frightened the hell out of me, the way they played against South Carolina last week. I know it's a lot of points. Maybe this is the game. You can't be pissing away games, though, if you're Kentucky. You got to show up in a conference game like that against South Carolina. And they were just dominated, manhandled that offensive line. Good luck against Georgia now, which just, by the way, shut down Clemson 34-3. 82-6 in the first two games combined for Georgia against Clemson and Tennessee Tech. Last year, these teams played. It was 51-13 in favor of Georgia. So they absolutely destroyed this Kentucky team. There was no offense to speak of whatsoever. Yeah. I'm not trusting Kentucky here. I don't think I'm laying it with Georgia either, but I would definitely not be ready to run to trust the Kentucky Wildcats, and especially that offensive line after just getting hammered that unit last week by South Carolina repeatedly. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, this is low. I'd lean under. And even team total under. I mean, it's not going to be. It's going to be probably 10.5. But even the last few times with great defenses, 2022, last year was the 51-13. But at Kentucky in 2022, 16-6, and 2020, 14-3. I think Georgia could maybe score a little bit more than that. But I don't see Kentucky after last week. I mean, that offense getting a few touchdowns. But maybe their defense, like Georgia doesn't blow them out. And maybe it is kind of that. Maybe they could hang around. It's just so tough. You kind of have to look at last week and just how bad they were. And, this is the big game, though, for them at home. Maybe they could be a little bit better, and they could cover this number. It's not easy to say that after watching that, but and watching Georgia.
Even their defense, that was not, early it was good, but then they started to come unglued, and they started to let South Carolina move the football against them. And, yeah, that was such a bad performance. Where before last week, I may be interested in Kentucky in this spot, plus the points against Georgia. Now I'm not. So that's how bad that was. Whew, that was bad for Kentucky last week, especially on offense against South Kakalaki. All right, Rocky Mountain Showdown, another rivalry. This must be the new rivalry week here in college football. Colorado State, the Buffaloes, Colorado, 7.5-point road favorites, 59 the total. Now, note that this is actually in Fort Collins in Colorado. This is not a neutral field game, and it's the first time in a very long time that Colorado has actually gone to play at Colorado State on their campus for this game. So, like I said, I think this is I'm telling you what, Colorado State's not look good. They get absolutely destroyed by Texas, 30.5-point favorites against Northern Colorado, and they struggled to gain separation in that game. It took a while. It wasn't great for the run game or for Braden Fowler, Nicolo. Like they don't look good, Colorado State, and yet I'm still leaning to Colorado State because this is the game you've had circled. Colorado laying points on the road with the offensive line is still a complete disaster. 2 games in a row against North Dakota State and Nebraska. Shedeur Sanders is running for his life. There's no run game. They can't run the football. He's running for his life. Anything that he does in the passing game is, ad lib because he can't. Name me the plays that we've seen him able to just step back in the pocket, scan the field, step up in the pocket, and throw the football, a clean pocket. When have you seen it for Colorado this year? Very little. So that's a concern for sure. Now, it's Colorado State's defense, which hasn't been great. Maybe this is the week, but I ain't trusting them. And you damn well know after Colorado State had a huge lead in Boulder last year, what was Colorado State leading? 28-17 at one point. And then all of a sudden, Colorado comes back. They get the fortuitous calls late in the game. They tie it up. They win in overtime, 43-35. You got to know after that heartbreaking loss for Jay Norvell and his Colorado State team that they've got this game triple circled. And even with their issues, rough against Texas, although Texas looks damn good. We saw what they did at Michigan. And the struggles against Northern Colorado, I'm still leaning to Colorado State. Plus 7.5 here. C-Mac, what do you think? Rocky Mountain Showdown.
Yeah, me too. And they've looked awful, really, Colorado State, even last week.
Colorado's looked awful in the trenches, especially the O-line.
Nebraska took it right to him. We've mentioned that. That's one of the worst offensive lines, just running for his life. They have a tough time running it. I think Fowler here could throw it around. They had the success in last year's game. And this is the rivalry. This is like circled here, Babano, especially after last year's that OT game you were mentioning. Colorado State plus the 7.5. I don't know how this stays under, too, with both. They're just going to sling it. We're not going to have a lot of running in this game. We might not get the 43-35 OT, but I think at this number, the 58.5, I think it could creep over.
All right. Next up is your NBC Saturday night Big Ten game, Indiana and UCLA, which is, of course, now a Big Ten conference game. Indiana, 2.5-point road favorites out in LA, 46.5 the total in this game. I still do not trust UCLA. I know they escaped by the skin of their teeth against Hawaii, and they have a bye week following that game, following that trip to the island, but that offense was putrid. Ethan Garbers looked like Ethan Garbage, for much of that game against Hawaii.
Good old Garbers.
Yeah, that offense is not pretty for UCLA right now, and they should have lost that game, quite honestly. If Hawaii just stops, with turnovers and mistakes and some penalties, 2 interceptions from Shager in that game really hurt. I will say UCLA's defense played well last year, and they did play well against Hawaii, but boy, that offense is a work in progress. The bottom line is you've got an Indiana team where it's a lot of JMU transfers. We talked about that. Kurt Cignetti, the new head coach, brought a lot of his guys there. I know they've played Western Illinois and Florida International in the first 2 games. Hasn't been the toughest competition, but they've looked good. Curtis Rourke, very experienced quarterback from Ohio, the Bobcats transfer. He's looked sharp. I think the defense has played pretty well so far. And I think the defense, even though they haven't played anybody yet, I think personnel-wise, quality of the roster on that side of the ball is good enough to bottle up a UCLA offense that I just don't think is very good right now. So less than a field goal, I'm laying it with Indiana. I think they can go on the road and get a win here. You've also got, C-Mac, the much, much, much more experienced at the collegiate level head coach in Kurt Cignetti against Deshaun Foster, former NFL running back, who's now coaching his second game in college football here for UCLA. And I think that's a big advantage coaching-wise as well for Indiana. And I'm a big fan of Kurt Cignetti, and obviously we saw the great job he did at James Madison. So at anything less than a field goal, give me Indiana here to get the win on the road. C-Mac, what do you think? Indiana, UCLA.
Yeah, I get it. I like Cignetti too. I'm a big Rourke fan, and for him to have hopefully a big year with Indiana, and this would be a really good win for them. To go here at UCLA, the Rose Bowl, and win. I get why they're favored here a little bit. UCLA just to go off that one game. Yeah, it was just Garbers. He kind of threw it around. I mean, both teams had turnovers, but they did. Can UCLA bottle up? Last year they lost the pieces, obviously, some of the D-line and linebackers, but they were so good against the run. Can they hold down Indiana here? I kind of lean under. There's just a little bit unknown in this one. Like, did the offense maybe click a little bit more? And this is a little bit low. It gets over. But for me, after seeing these two schools, I could only be on the under in this game.
All right, Connor Mack leaning under there. All right, Maryland, Virginia. Maryland 2.5-point road favorites. 55 the total in this game. Virginia defense eventually got it going in the fourth quarter, but for 3 quarters, they could not stop Hank Bachmeier and Wake Forest, and that's still a shaky defense that Virginia has. And we know Maryland, not as much last week against Michigan State, because they end up losing outright as favorites to Michigan State last week, as they did against UConn, where they were able to move the ball. They got stymied a little bit in that loss to Michigan State. There was a bit of he still played pretty well overall, Billy Edwards, but obviously not as explosive. And more importantly, the defense just got lit up by Aiden Childs, 363 passing yards. Secondary was not good for Maryland in that game. And Anthony Calandria can sling the football. I'm more and more impressed with Calandria. I think Tony Elliott made the right decision going with him as the quarterback over the Musket man, Tony Musket. His performance in that fourth quarter led Virginia all the way back to win that game against Wake. Coming off a big win like that, can they sustain it? This is a tricky game from a side perspective. I still lean UVA. I might reward UVA again for cashing for me last week in that comeback win. I like Calandria. Let's see Maryland do it on the road too, right? They played UConn on the road, at home, I should say, and destroyed UConn. And they played Michigan State at home in College Park, and they lost. Now you got to go on the road. So let's see how the Terrapins handle it. So that's another reason I lean Virginia, but I like the over here. 55. I mean, Maryland has shown you capable offense. Virginia's defense is still shaky, and vice versa. I think Virginia can move the football with Calandria against this Maryland defense. So I would probably go over 55. I think probably I like the total even more than the side in this game. C-Mac, what do you think? Maryland, Virginia.
Yeah, dating back to last year too. I mean, a little bit with Maryland. Their games went under, except like Nebraska State, of course, just stayed under against Auburn, but the rest of these they went over. Yeah, you know what? That game was tight. They beat up on a bad UConn team, but I just wasn't high on Maryland. We talked about, I don't know if their defense was that great. We saw the leaks, and last year they had crazy amount of turnovers. Can it continue? And now Edwards needs to go on the road here and win. I don't buy it. I'd love to have the 3 because I already like Virginia here. I mean, I think they can win outright. I think 2.5's all right, but the 3 would be better. And Calandra, he needs to take care of the ball. I like his arm, but even last week, the touchdowns late were great, but he had a couple picks at home. He takes care of the ball. They win this game. Virginia does. So I like Virginia here.
All right. See,
I don't blame you. I don't blame you over. I mean, I think it could probably get there.
I didn't put BYU Wyoming on the list of games, but I'll just briefly mention that Wyoming's in trouble. They got bombed by Arizona State. They lose to an FCS team at home, Idaho. And I know Idaho played tough with Oregon, but it's a bad look for Wyoming. BYU's taking money. I kind of see why. Wyoming, but I didn't think they'd fall off just because Bull retired, but my goodness, it's looking like maybe that is the case. That Wyoming program falling off a little bit. All right, San Diego State and Cal, final game of this edition of Hitting the Books. We've got Cal 18-point home favorites, 49.5 the total in this game. Look, this is not a spot I'm going to lay 18 with Cal. They're off a huge win, way over on the other side of the country against Auburn on the road last week. And now you come back home and you're laying a big number against San Diego State. We know we love Wilcox as a double-digit dog. Double-digit favorite? Not so much. Doesn't mean they can't cover here, but the problem is San Diego State looks like, and look, I still like Sean Lewis. I do. I like the hire. I think it's going to be good in time, but there's clearly issues here. This offense that he inherited from the Brady Hoke era, this was an offense meant for running the football, ground and pound, Not a ton of playmakers, not a ton of speed at receiver to throw the ball and go fast and up tempo like Sean Lewis wants to do. And you're kind of seeing the struggles of this offense. I mean, to not score at all against Oregon State, who's kind of retooling this year after Jonathan Smith moved on, that's definitely concerning for the San Diego State offense. I think it's just a misfit right now. Sean Lewis trying to go up tempo, throw the ball more, and they just don't have the personnel. They don't have the players for it. This is a run-heavy, ground-and-pound offense all these years, and now Sean Lewis is trying to turn them into maybe something they're not. Throw the ball all over the lot and play fast. It's not what they're built to do. I think it's going to take maybe a year or two. Sean Lewis has to get his guys, his recruits, his players to play this kind of system in from the transfer portal, in via recruiting, and then eventually they'll find their footing. But, yeah, so it's tough to back San Diego State right now. But in this spot, it's equally tough to lay 18 with Cal. So probably leaves me on the sidelines and staying away from this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, same. I mean, you can't score. O'Neal doesn't look great at quarterback. I mean, I don't know who else they really have.
Yeah.
Yeah, to go to. So it could just be a really tough year for San Diego State. I think their defenses are. I mean, Oregon State, their offense maybe not be crazy because I lean to this under, but I worry maybe Cal breaks out in this game. So this is one I want to look at a little bit more because I was so impressed with the turnovers and how they played at Auburn. Cal, because last year this defense was bad, but then I mean they gave up a lot of plays. This Cal team,
they do look better on D. I agree. And opportunistic, forcing turnover. Did they still give up yards? Yeah, but they're opportunistic. They're forcing turnovers. Everyone says forcing turnovers is luck. For some teams, it's skill, and they're able to do it week in. And week out.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, to rip balls out and these guys to be on for fit. I mean, yeah, and I just remember early on last year they were just these high scoring. The defense was, and the offense wasn't there yet, and they were losing. So, I lean under. I cashed with San Diego State, with Oregon State last week. It was such a breeze. I lean that way. I think in the end, I stay off, and Cal wins this. But just as you put, now a favor like this. You take our winnings from last week and we'll go to it. You know what I mean? No way.
That being said, how bad San Diego State looked at, like a shutout at home against Oregon State. I actually could see Cal covering this number, but I'm not rushing to lay 18 with Cal.
Yeah. Here. Big win, though. Yeah. I mean, they are back home. Yeah. Maybe they're a little sleepy early. Yeah. Maybe this is a first half under. It's a late game, so.
Yeah, and they got to go cross country next week. They come back, so they're at Auburn.
Oh, they're going like this.
For one game, then they're at Florida State next week. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at their schedule. It looks like they're just flying back and forth.
Wow. Welcome to the crazy fucking world we live in now.
I know.
Football with Cal and Stanford in the ACC, which stands for Atlantic, and here they are in that conference. Yeah. Crazy.
Just wild, man.
Crazy times we live in. There you have it. Who else gives you 2.5 hours of college football previews for the upcoming week? All the weeknight games, many of the Saturday games, than us. We appreciate everybody tuning in. 168 live viewers. Hit the like button on the way out if you're watching on YouTube, and we appreciate everyone watching on the other platforms too, my Facebook and the Twitter X account, and of course the Hitting the Books YouTube channel. And shout out to the rest of the people in the chat. Sports Money, check out that YouTube channel as well. I know Mike M's got a big part of that. Make sure you check that out, the content there. Robert Franklin, appreciate you. Rants. Myron Kidd, Wake defense is so bad, Ole Miss is going to murder them. Dart going to pad stats for Heisman votes. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. If Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss can punch in that extra, you got to give this thought in the back of your mind with some of these games. If Ole Miss can punch in a touchdown late when they're up by 21 to help Jackson Dart in the Heisman running and also to cover a point spread, he'll do it. So keep that in mind with a game like that, Wake and Ole Miss. And the other comment from Myron, if Auburn can't score on a Nick Howell coach defense, then they're cooked for the. Yeah, I mean, this has to be the spot against New Mexico for Auburn to finally put up a big number.
Yeah.
We both agree there for sure. C-Mac, final words before we wrap it up. Always fun.
Oh, yeah, always that we do these Mondays. We will get out, the clips as quick as we can going forward, and it'll get better and better each week. Hopefully we could get them all in the next few weeks, maybe all out at once. But I just want to stay hot. It's 1 week at a time. And I had a really good week last week. Hopefully we keep it going. And for this channel, tell your friends, tell your uncle, tell your girlfriend's brother, sister. Two things: sub one time, that's it, and then hit the like button when you come through and on the videos we give out. That is it, my brother. Let's get it. Week 3.
No doubt. We appreciate everyone joining us here. And again, reminder, yeah, exactly. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell everyone you know, as many people as you know that are into college football, into betting as well, about Hitting the Books. We're on every Monday throughout the college football season, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And now that we've got this own channel rocking and rolling, we're carrying over content with yours truly and Connor Mack over into college basketball as well when that starts up. We'll determine how many shows we do and what time,
we'll figure
what
out
days once that starts, but we will give you something regularly with college basketball as well, right here on the Hitting the Books channel. So looking forward to that. This won't just be college football on this channel, college basketball too, once that starts up in November. But shout out to everyone for tuning in. Appreciate it very much, the support. Hit the like button on the way out. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. This has been another edition of the College Football Hitting the Books show. Thanks for watching. Class dismissed.